What is up, party people? All right, gonna be a pretty fun one, I guess you can say. Basically gonna go for the gonna go for the beginning of this as the crux for this climate stuff that I want to keep going on about. And then we kind of go to open panel, and usually ends up somewhere along the lines of flat Earth. We'll see. For all those in the bunker, the link is there already. Let's get in here and see what's up. I'll put the link in the chat as well. I'm just gonna let those guys get the first dibs at it. What's up, GPS? Friars Cat, how you doing? What's up, John Watson? It's been a long time. What else is here? What's up, Militant Manny? What's up, Matt64? Lenny, I think I gave you a good shout out yesterday. It's worked good. What's up, Laura? How you doing? Let me see. I think that is it for now. What's up, Tesla's Apple? No, Manny, you're fired. What's up, Jack Jacks? What's up, Eli, Ohio? And I think that is it. Let me see. Hey, Amy, how you doing? What's up, Kurt? What's up, Ali B? What's up, Grizz? And that is it for now. All right, so like I was saying, kind of dive right back into where we were the other day. One of the things I wanted to share with everyone is, again, I'm only giving you guys information that's kind of already given. Of course, like most of the things we observe and understand as science, we all can't do ourselves. So we, certain things have to be done by others, and the faith that I have in what's happening with geoengineering and weather modification falls under the guides of the gentleman Jim Lee that owns Climate Viewer 3D. It's an awesome website. You guys are gonna see it in a second. Just everything you need to know. Anytime, his maps are so damn interactive. I mean, I think on his website he said 600 plus maps on the his website that basically has different scenarios for what's going on. Save this one. Oh, 1 second. Everything on the other screen. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pull up a couple articles I wanted to talk about, and I wanted to talk about these articles mainly because, ironically, we got this huge ass hurricane going on. I'm not sure if you're living under a rock, you don't know. It hit category 5 this morning. Now, by no means am I saying the hurricane Damon or some, I forget what they call it. See, I'm trying to find what I'm looking for. Hang on 1 second. Hurricane Damon. There you go. Yeah. So it hit category 5 this morning, and it seemed kind of weird, in my opinion, that all this talk of Trump's comments about nuking hurricanes, and then now you got a lot of scientists coming out talking about why we can't nuke hurricanes, which I really hope no one needs to be that doesn't need to be explained to anybody. I don't even want to talk about that part. So one of the things I because I'm starting to research that kind of stuff and going deeper into different webs of what's going on, I come to new technology coming in, because a lot of the stuff that's used is new technology to make these theories feasible when it comes to weather modification. Let's see. I'm gonna go ahead and I'll share this one first. So I'm pretty sure for the most part you guys know who Northrop Grumman is. It's like a Raytheon or a where the hell is it? Oh, there it is. It's like a Raytheon. It's like it's just like the brain fart. My bad, guys. I was kind of looking off in the distance. They're basically a big government contractor. They do most of the contracting for DARPAs and and not so much the mainstream DoD, I guess you would say. They kind of sit back a little. They're more the technical guys, you know, the gadgets that go on the weapons, and or the it's a harness system that attaches whatever applied technology they're applying to, you know, these jets and all that kind of stuff. That's more what Northrop. Here you go. Bad yawn. Northrop Grumman. That's what they do. So what I wanted to show you guys, and this is again from Northrop Grumman's website. And I'm gonna go ahead and switch screens so you guys can see it real quick. There we go. All right, so this first article that I came across from Northrop Grumman. Again, I think I put the chat out there, guys, or the link out there if you guys want to join the panel. You guys can interrupt. I'm just babbling right now. You guys probably want to see it, huh? Right, there you go. So again, this is Northrop Grumman, and they're talking about the feasibility and the technology that's out now to basically control these storms. So the article stands, you know, and this is a numerous articles in this one page I will look at. It says storm control with weather machine technology. Sorry about that. So it says, have you ever seen the dark clouds rolling in and wished you could wave them away? Although weather manipulation on a personal level exists only in fiction, weather machine technology on a bigger scale is already on the horizon. Based around cloud modification, Business Insider notes that around the world, many countries are working on controlling their weather. I mean, that's pretty eye-opening. I don't know if there's denying shit about it. And it says, you know, man-made weather manipulation. I'm not going to read this whole damn thing, but although it sounds like science fiction, weather machines in action are weather machines are in action around the world already, influencing factors such as rainfall, storm severity, and snowpack. Most of them rely on cloud seeding techniques that force clouds to rain. All right. Goes on, you know, talking about how China used it during the Olympics. If you guys don't know about Saudi Arabia, you know, they've been cloud seeding since the 90s when Clinton was in office. That was the first time they started doing that. They started and are part of a very elite, rich group of the United Arab Emirates. Sorry about that, guys. I got the AC on, so it makes me tired. The United Arab Emirates. They basically fund billions into these studies, weather modification. They've actually, to where we cloud seed, we use these flares of silver iodine. They use ionized techniques where they're electrifying the air. It's like jump starting them almost. It says the United Emirates or UAE is also investigating weather modification. Since a large part of the country are arid, there is great stress on groundwater supplies in areas at low rainfall and high evaporation rates. According to the research program for rain enhancement science, UAE researchers are looking into aircraft dispersal cloud seeding to increase rainfall and improve freshwater supply, which is odd because like I just repeated or just told you guys, they strongly stick to the ionizing the atmosphere to make it rain. All right, so the next one would be how weather machines techniques work. Basically, we kind of gone over that yesterday. They basically excite the molecules, blah blah blah. Okay, so this is the main article in this that I wanted to go over, and I want to remind people, for a very long time, and a lot of other truthers do this, where we start talking about patents that we come across. Well, I can show you probably 50 patents from that I had when I was a flat earther truly understood what was going on. Just, all the deniers that don't want to believe it, that are in fruition right now. And every single one of those patents that I could show you, I've been told you're crazy. They don't do that. They don't do this. It's like, here's a realization. Not only do they do these things, they've been doing it so long in the past. What makes you think they're not? That's my big question. We went from horse and carriage, riding around middle of fucking boondock. You know what I mean? So at what point should technology actually start catching up to what these deniers are calling it? And like I said, anyone you guys can jump on in out there for you guys. How it kind of lags out, and you guys after a while you don't see it. Hey, what's up, Chris? What's up, Hannah? How you doing? Let me see here. I'm trying to get the right window, so I do apologize on that part. Really wasn't paying attention. I was kind of looking down. There we go. So, like I said, this is the main thing I wanted to look at, and this is the bubbles for hurricane suppression. I gotta get Maxwell in here. What's up, Maxwell? Can you hear me?
Did you see that website I posted, North American Weather Modification?
I did not, but I do know I know the website already. It's another one of those $1 million companies.
Yep.
Yeah, it's there's a lot of companies. I think at one point I counted. I'm gonna say there's about 30 different companies around the world that do this. And again, a lot of their flights that are when they're doing that, those are mostly private. Those are guys that are just they get hired by that company to do it. Not all those companies have all the planes they need. So basically, what we're talking about is the bubbles for hurricane suppression. It says your TV is way too loud. It's very distracting.
My bad.
Of course it is.
Hold
You're Maxwell. It's how you roll. Okay, so
I'm watching the hurricane because they're talking about how now it's turning into bigger than what was predicted and how it's going to impact like Alabama and.
well, how's that?
Like that.
It's already a Category 5.
I know, but it wasn't predicted to be as bad as it was, or as it's going to be.
They've been talking about it going to be a 5 for 2 days now. But yeah, I see what you're saying, and we're going to get into that. That's why this hurricane is actually perfect timing for this. So what I was finishing reading now, it says bubbles for hurricane suppression. Ocean temperature drive hurricane formations as a storm's intensity depends on the warm weather at the surface. Making it cooler could, in theory, diminish the power of a hurricane. I'm gonna tell you guys now, they've tried it. It didn't work. An ocean weather machine that produces bubbles concerns bringing cooler water from depths reduce surface temperatures. This one I actually hadn't read it. It won't work because they've done it before. They tried it. It's one of the things they actually want to do to the Great Barrier Reef. You remember we were talking to John yesterday. That's what they're doing to the Barrier Reef right now. They're using this method of pumping the cooler water up. Will it work? Who knows? But there is a catch to this. The testing of it. One of the biggest issues I come across when I am talking about this stuff is, how do you know they're doing it? Well, there's a lot of documents talking about it. Obviously, a lot of patents showing that they are bringing it to fruition. They want to use it, or they want to. That they want to be able to do these things. The problem is that we have NMODs, we have treaties that don't allow any of this stuff. Yet, very clear, and there's a few things in here you're gonna read that I will start reading that you guys are gonna see how much BS they really do push to us. Now, luckily there is Barney. Barney has really helped me out figure out, what's worth the idea of fighting for or against, better yet, against, and what they're doing as opposed to, realizing that it's not something that's easy to do. And it's not something that, science is just going to snap its fingers and everything be explained. It doesn't work that way. I do wanted to add something in the chat. The Globers, if you don't want to piss a flat earther off, rather than say dinosaurs, just say ancient animals. They love it. So let me see. So this is the one. Well, this isn't the one, but this is one we can talk about. This one. This one actually goes along with the whole quote unquote bubbles and bubbles suppression, basically because they were in the same timeline. We're talking about trying these methods of injecting aerosols. Not sure if that sounds familiar. The solar radiation management. So it says an international team of Earth scientists has used 8 Earth system model simulations of a climate under geoengineering model incorporation project to predict the change in the number of hurricanes and other types of tropical storms that occur over the next 50 years. If sulfide aerosols were injected into the atmosphere to mitigate the impact of global warming, in their papers published in Proceeding of the National Academy of Sciences, the researchers describe the models that they show suggest that such injections, if done on a massive scale, might prove monetarily effective, though they note that different types of aerosols would have to be used to prevent harm on the ozone layer. So the issue there would be, and this is a big issue for solar radiation management if they start doing it, because they don't know what particle size they need to come up with. They don't. The particle size meaning it's in the aerosols. If it's too heavy, it just drops. It comes down to Earth. Pointless. If it's too light, it dissipates, and they'll have to spray extra. So it's a real fine line on what they need to do, what they're gonna do, and one of the things that they're not doing is being honest. So let me see here. Let me get to the next one. Let me see. And again, all these links will be in the Discord server. I think most of these already are. If not, in the description after the stream. Let me see. So yeah, so that's that one. And like I said, I'm always going to be running through this stuff. I kind of gone through all this already. I've read it backwards, basically. So if anybody has a question, please tag me. Maxwell, if you have questions, stop me. I don't mind at all, because I do know I kind of rant on with this stuff. So to keep the playing field fair. Okay. So the next one I wanted to pull up is there's a we'll use this one. There it is. I found it. Okay, so this was an eye opener to me. It's not even an eye opener because I've expressed that I think this is happening. I've expressed to a lot of people. This is where they're turning to. The idea is drones. What better way than drones to use for weather modification? The problem is in this. For one, globes, they don't fly forever. You guys are going to enjoy the information I have on that, because DARPA has figured that out as well. All right, give me a second so I can wait till the dog goes inside. Okay, so like I was saying, this is from a 2014's Drones Offer New Horizon Solutions for Weather Modification. Cloud seeding may be the next frontier for unmanned aircraft systems, more commonly known as drones with potential globe implications. State of Nevada was one of the 6 selected test sites. Damn, I'm all tongue-tied. 6 selected test sites by the Federal Aviation Administration in December 2013. One of the state's focus one of the state's focus is how drones can make cloud seeding easier, more economical process. Cloud seeding is the attempt to I don't read all that shit. This is necessary research to be done before cloud seeding can be proven as an effective tool, according to AccuWeather, or whatever the fuck this site is, meteorologist Jesse Farrell. It's hard to prove. It's hard to prove it works or not because we don't know what would happen if we hadn't seeded. He said, still, it sees how drones could assist the technology. What's up, Gary? Could assist the technology, and I lost my spot. Where am I? Okay, for cloud seeding. Okay, here we go. Prove it works or not. Blah blah blah. Oh, that was it, huh? Okay. So a lot of you guys know that NOAA, NASA, they have these drones. I've shown you these pictures 1,000 times. They are fully capable of flying through a hurricane into the eye of a storm. They actually still send real pilots doing that shit. It doesn't even make any sense. That dog barks anymore. I gotta go on mute. All right, so like I was saying, all right. So let me get to this next one. Oh, so let me finish this one. So basically, the guides are that they want to start using these things for cloud seeding. Again, it's when they're cloud seeding, not so much the idea that they need to spray something. More like they have a row of flares on the back of the the back of the wings as they fly through the clouds. Again, what we're talking about now is now kind of a little different, only in the aspect of applied science that they're doing cloud seeding now. Not, I don't know what they're doing so much with the hurricanes, but okay. So the only issue I see with this is one, the drones are going to need more landing sites. We're going to have to regulate better for FAA, because now you got unmanned drones flying at lower altitudes. Because again, cloud seeding's in the cloud. It's not, doesn't need to be up in that higher elevations or higher areas of the atmosphere, I guess. Fuck. Trying to find a piece, and I can't do it and talk at the same time, because there's another one I wanted to show you guys that just blew my fucking mind when I saw it. Give me 1 second so I can find this.
Here's something for you, Sean. Have you heard of Operation Popeye?
Absolutely. Operation Popeye was the one where they basically cloud seeded chemicals and made it fucking monsoon for months.
Yeah, during the Vietnam War.
Yes. Yeah. It leaves a big ass dog in the middle of an empty room. Okay. One of these are what I was looking for and I didn't see it. 1 second. Oh, and I wanted to make it clear. This weather agency, they're part of that lawsuit that is going against the administration, because again, Astro Rex, if you're out there, that's how it works. And yeah, that's the other thing. We're gonna go into that. I've been having a lot of people in my comments telling me how climate change is such a hoax. If you actually start doing some research into it, there's no way in hell you're gonna tell me it's a hoax. Period. It's happening. It's true. Sorry. Get that link out there. If unfortunately Maxwell isn't the best devil's advocate for these situations, so oops, wrong one. That is the link to, that will be the link to the get rid of this page. Hang on. There we go. To put it this way, it's too early on a Sunday. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. Okay, so as I try to find it, because all in my link and the links in my bookmarks, under your guys' view, I'm pretty sure, Gary, I can almost guarantee you're not anywhere near a climate denier. I think you may be at work or
What what you mean climate deniers?
climate change, global warming. Is it a hoax? Is it propaganda? Is it just what's happening?
No, climate change is happening.
Hmm?
Really, that's demonstrable, right? Climate change is happening.
Yeah. Well, climate change. Yeah. Well, I guess you would say at a better rate of it is if we don't do anything, the scale at which it changes will happen much faster than it normally does.
Yeah.
And then along with the geoengineering field, right now they're doing the field experiments publicly, but that's going to be the next step where they start spraying aerosol sulfates to blanket. All these, that will become a geoengineering aspect, which will change climate in itself.
Well, is this to stop the next coming ice age, or is this, or why? What's the purpose?
It is to cool the planet. We are in a. See, that's the other thing. All right, let me say this part first. So the issue with how things are perceived with this issue is why there are climate deniers. The worst case scenario for us is the global temp dropping too low. So we're in a crisis where we're worried about it gaining 1.5 degrees Celsius. If we were to have an ice age, the temp would drop faster. Everything would happen faster in an ice age. We could essentially be extinct if the ice age happened as they are worried about. Luckily, we're warming up right now, so their worst case now is we lose a lot of land, a lot of species die, humans die. Everyone's moving closer to the Midwest rather than to the shores. I mean, there's a list. I could go on forever. So, okay, well, I guess now kind of finish it. So, as far as goes to both of you really. As far as climate is concerned, or global warming is concerned, because then we're going to start talking about the geoengineering aspect of it. What do you think is real? What do you think is BS? And as I call it, fill in their pockets. My main man Barney's here to try to go against everything I say. Well, what's up, Barney?
That's my only purpose in this channel, to go against what you say. To raise doubt into your understanding of what you say.
Well, you have made me turn a different. You've made me look at it differently. Now, I'm not looking at the actual applied geoengineering they want to do. I'm looking at the people that do it now.
Yeah.
I still have the same conclusion under it, and I think we talked about that, where what I'm thinking is sound, but we talk about it like as if this is the beginning of the new age where they're telling us what to do. They fucked up. We didn't do anything. Kind of a shitty situation. Yeah, so one of the other aspects of this conversation that I'm happy you're here for, Barney, because we were starting to talk about it yesterday, and it was a little difficult. Difficult in a sense of, I think John, the guy that came in the panel yesterday, everyone, he didn't have. I don't think he'd been on my panels. I think he was new to the channel, so he didn't know like where I was going with it. Because a lot of what people think nowadays in this community is you're either this or you're that. And I think I kind of break the mold and go everywhere with that one.
As well, you should. You should be neither this nor that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's a crazy thing. Flat Earth is all this.
Yeah,
all this
I don't
shit.
think that anybody is black or white.
Well, Sean was always a strange flat earther.
I'm a strange globe earther too now. And I don't mind it at all, because the realization is I know based on how I think and how I focus in on research, No one is me. No one's gonna think exactly like me. There's too much going on in this head. I too in love with being a conspiracy theorist. It's fun. Well, I guess not even a conspiracy theorist right now. I'm just I'm an informer. But I don't think I've actually been able to ask you this because I don't think the topic actually came up, Barney. Cloud seeding hurricanes. What's your opinion?
Is that a question? I need more information on the proposition to know what I think about it.
You
Are
mean
we
like
cloud
putting
seeding
out a fire
hurricanes?
with a fire? Is that what you mean?
I didn't hear either of you. Say it again.
I said, do you mean like putting out a fire with a fire? Is that what you're referring to?
No. How would I put it? Make it a little easier to explain. Okay, so you know what cloud seeding is?
Yes.
Same thing. Other cases they've used different things. I know the first couple times they've done it or they did it, they used dry ice. Pretty sure it does the same. It would kind of have the same aspect of it, but they were under more of the guides of will it be able to cool the upflow that of warm water that drives the eye basically. I think they came to the conclusion it wouldn't work, but oh sorry, someone in the chat's asking me what cloud seeding is the act of basically applying silver iodine to a moisture stricken area. So there has to be moisture, but it's not going to have enough, and they're able to get those nuclei all excited and closer to each other, heavier, denser, and basically make rain. It's used for a bunch of other things, but that would have to go into a list and then start explaining each one by one. But essentially, they're able to manipulate the weather. Is it how feasible is it? Best records I've seen that are consistent, 12, 15%, but it works 100% of the time of that percent. I didn't get it, but I kind of get it now. So don't think it works every time. It just, in the times that they're able to observe something maybe different, they feel they have enough evidence that it is the cloud seeding in those very small percentages. Which again is another red flag because that also means they haven't put the time in to have a complete understanding of what's next, what will happen next. And again, I know Barney, time is time, and the guys doing it now weren't around 50 years ago doing it. So I mean,
So they have to do it now.
yeah, but the problem is the big cats doing it happen to all be part of this same billion-dollar club. Not they're all billionaires, but they all have some tie with Bill Gates, some ties with hedge fund investors, some ties like they have ties. So again, this kind of goes along the lines of how Flat Earth thinks of science as bias or very biased or corrupt, for that matter. The realization is
I just want to jump in on the cloud seeding thing. So you can't cloud seed if the humidity is not sufficient. The problem with cloud seeding is that droplets below a certain size, like the evaporation happens at surface, and the amount that needs to evaporate to cancel condensation scales with volume. So very, very small droplets can form, but they will evaporate faster than they can form large droplets. So for a droplet in a cloud to happen, or for a visible point of water to happen, you need a nuclei. You need some form of a dust particle or an already existing small droplet bit of ice, something where the water can accumulate and condensate enough to form a droplet, right?
yes, cloud seeding does not, I repeat, does not create rain. Does not create these storms. It has nothing. All it does is take very little of something, excite it, and make it happen, or attempt to make it happen is a better way of saying it. But yeah, like you said, it takes a special, like, they're not just flying planes spraying or setting off these silver iodine flares. They actually do their due diligence when it comes to where's the best pockets of this moisture, what time of year, where should we? That's a big one, because here in California, they cloud seed on a regular basis. Not on a regular basis like every day, but we know it's always going on the West Coast. Santa Barbara, LA area does it. They might as well do it every day. But what they do here is they actually do the spraying over the ocean, and they let the breeze take over after that. Or the current.
So one form of this is in agriculture. I don't know if you have hail defense.
I don't. We don't hear, but I know. I mean, because of the research, I know exactly what you're talking about.
So it's a common practice for, like, I've learned about it in elementary school, literally, where if there is danger of hail that might beat down your crops, you can send off rockets filled with silver iodine or some other particulate matter, get the clouds to form further downwind and drop their load in form of rain, or kind of drop the heaviest load before they reach the fertile lands, before they yeah. And that's like that's we're not talking about new technologies that are being tested. No, this has been done for.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, and that's a big thing. And the reason I talk about cloud seeding and weather modification, and then I do this part, is because it's very important. Cloud seeding is applied. Cloud seeding is so real. Get over it. Here's the thing, though. It has nothing to do when we talk geoengineering. Throw weather mod or cloud seeding out the window. That's piddles. Again, like I said, cloud seeding is very local. They're not able to have enough planes to make it a geoengineering situation when they're cloud seeding.
And in a certain respect, contrails actually literally are
chemtrails.
Unintentional cloud seeding, right?
Yep, they actually do a bunch of studies on that.
The exhaust of the engine, the change in the pressure that it causes, everything that gets it serves that very purpose. If the air is humid enough but doesn't have something to nucleate, when a plane goes by, those droplets will nucleate on the exhaust, and then you will get that long-lasting literal cloud after the plane.
Well, another issue that it's not even an issue, but it was a reason for worry, or a reason for conspiracy ideas about it, is the idea that they use an additive in the fuel, so that way they wouldn't have to do these long contrails. It'd be basically the exhaust from the engines that would do it itself. The issue is that the science isn't backing that. They've done these studies and come to the conclusion that there's a certain amount of these contrails that do affect the weather or the climate in certain situations and times or pockets of the world. Saw it at 9/11 when they stopped flying planes. We saw this. We didn't see it because most of us, I was too young. I wasn't even born when this happened. In the late 70s, New Orleans sued the Air Force because the Air Force used to fly those big ass planes, and this is when the whole idea that they were spraying, the whole carbon black. And again, it's none of these situations that we hear about, that were illegal, whatnot, or behind our backs, whatever. None of these things they're not using these high-tech nanobot type chemical, no. Anything can do this. I gave the very good analogy of I'll go ahead and stop sharing. A really good analogy of how the Native Americans, when they do their rain dances, the dance doesn't do it. It's the insanely large bonfire they do it around. And that's what it is, Barney, right?
Yeah.
Because
So one thing that I wanted to kind of point out, when you say there are additives in the fuel for the purpose of cloud seeding, for the
no, no, no,
purpose of
no.
just let me
Okay, I'm sorry.
like that would be a very inefficient way, right? First of all, you don't want things in your jet engine that might be useful for nucleation, not in the quantities that you are kind of dispersing them about. You want as little of that as possible, or it will hurt your engine.
Yeah.
Secondly, you want to disperse it. You don't want it in a thin line behind you that the jet engine produces. So when they do seed by plane, these are the kind of the things that I'm showing are the kind of things that they do. They do explosive devices that will kind of spread it out as far as possible, strewn around along the whole length of the of the wing, right?
Mhm.
Instead of just having it in one exhaust
Yeah.
tube.
I think I probably misspoke, and I probably shouldn't have put them together. Um, the idea of it being an additive in the fuel, that really holds more weight with the contrail people. But at the same time, I mean, it doesn't. I mean, 100% agree with everything you just said. And I even misspeak how it's used because I'm used to saying spraying. When it the realization of it is they don't spray anything when they're cloud seeding. They're basically setting off these flares with that packed with the silver iodine, and it, like you're saying, it scatters. It's a mess. It's nothing uniformed, and but it needs to. Go ahead. True.
Well, I was just gonna say, have you looked at China? Because China's big into cloud seeding, and
Oh,
they
they.
shot like 400 iodine cigarette-sized sticks into the clouds to create for testing, and now they're doing it regularly.
Oh, dude, you're so far behind. You know when they had the Olympics? Beijing is one of the most polluted areas atmosphere wise. They cloud seeded the crap out of that place. And if you go back and look at footage of the Olympics, it looks like a pristine atmosphere. So I mean, they used it for clearing all that smog out. Kind of backtrack. Where was I?
So I'm still waiting for you to explain the question that you were posing. What do I think about cloud seeding and hurricanes?
Okay.
What's the connection between cloud seeding and hurricanes?
Because what they want to do is the idea of cloud seeding. They want to do this to hurricanes for the idea of suppressing it, and then there are the other reasons for it. But ultimately, we're gonna stay mainstream and not go on a too big of a tangent. The idea is that they'll be able to seed them and minimize the strength of them, suppress them.
So I would say that would work as in the same way as hail defense, right?
Yeah,
Where
mm-hmm.
if you did it far enough east from the coast of the U.S., the hurricane would reach its peak while it was mid-Atlantic. Like the droplets would become too big, the clouds would become too dense midway across the Atlantic. So that's where the most precipitation would happen. And then hopefully you would get a weaker hurricane reaching the coast. Because this way, the clouds and the winds build up as it approaches the east coast and hit at maximum force as it picks up heat from the ocean and the moisture from the air, and all of it combines into the perfect storm on the east coast.
So have you heard
Did you
about?
see that? So is electrostatic cloud seeding a real thing?
It's called ionized cloud seeding. That's what the
Well, yeah, they did it
UAE is doing.
before Hurricane Harvey, and Hurricane Harvey
No,
freaking wiped out
nope,
Texas.
nope. Different, completely different. The ionized seeding method is all ground. It looks like you know what? You remember the harp antennas? if you saw an ionized system, an ionized seeding project or something, you're going to see a huge field full of things that look like antennas. That's how they're doing it in the Middle East as far as over the decades. Right now, they are looking into more of this clouding aspect of it. I'm pretty sure just the money wise, but they're a different story than us. I mean, when you talk putting money into geoengineering, they put serious money into it. I'm talking their budgets for the researchers doing these studies. I guarantee you their budget's tenfold ours when it comes to this topic. All right, so I just wanted to show you guys. I'm trying to get the climate viewer or weather history or weather modification history.com. This is that guy Jim Lee that I frequently get all my research starting from. I'm gonna put the link in the chat so everyone else has that. Why am I on a black screen still? I keep doing that. Fuck. Apologize out there, guys. You guys are staring at black screen. So this link is another company, or not another company. This is the guy Jim Lee that really puts out all this information for everyone. The right freaking. All my hangouts are all messed up. Oh, that's why. My bad, guys. I was on the completely wrong one. All right, so go ahead and start sharing. Okay, so the reason I asked the question was we know that cloud seeding, thus it's so minuscule we can't give it 100% yet. Have you heard of Project Storm Fury, Barney?
It sounds vaguely familiar, but no, I don't know what it is.
Okay, so that was the time. Basically, what they did is they as if it was quote unquote the first attempt at seeding a hurricane in the idea of suppressing it. Let me go ahead and find it real quick. Okay, so it's right. I'm pretty sure once you see the headline of it.
Yeah, I see what it is.
Yeah. Okay, so in that situation, again, it was one of those things where it's like we can't say it. It 100% was the reason for what happened, but it's to the point where they were sued. People get sued. These lawsuits are coming out. In my eyes, when the courts rule for the defendants, it's a very big eye opener to me. As in, they didn't know what was going to happen, and would they have said something? Because they weren't going to say anything about this project that happened. A media outlet did, because the story was so big. Let me see. I'm trying to see how much they dumped into it. It says the official of the Office of Naval Research and U.S. Weather Bureau functioned jointly on a research planning on early October 13, 1947. 200 pounds of dry ice were dropped throughout the storm, then located about 350 miles east of Jacksonville, Florida, basically all they're doing is basically explaining the path of it and how it wasn't what they thought it would it had nothing to do with what they thought would happen, and it basically scared the crap out of them. In this what I'm talking about, I think it was one person died. Yeah, one person died, $3.2 million of damage. The idea of them believing they did something to it was that turn you're looking at. Here's the issue. I think it was within 10, 15 years' time, they then already knew. They then found out, better yet, that hurricanes sometimes do these weird, freaky things. They don't know why. But because they cloud seeded this one, and it has that drastic turn, they're going to give this more crux to it actually happening, because they know they hadn't actually seen a hurricane do this on record at the time. Now better yet. Now back to my question. A hurricane is different than cloud seeding in a sense of cloud seeding is nothing. It's not harmful. But the complexity of a hurricane is obviously just, it's insane. We still don't fully understand hurricanes at all. So don't think we do. Playing with hurricanes, good idea, bad idea? And the question is based under that, under the guides of this project and not knowing hurricanes very well. Damn.
So I would say it's a necessary idea. It depends to which extent. It depends on where your error bars lie. So everything that you do can potentially cause a disaster. If you fart out of your window, that could cause a hurricane if I fart out of my window in Croatia, that could make a hurricane on the East Coast worse, right? Everything that you do has some degree of risk involved in it. Whether we can get to understand these things enough to actually affect them in a way that we want to affect them, some risks are acceptable, I would say. Now, what level of risk that is?
If it gets to,
Go ahead, Sasha.
You there?
Sasha?
yeah, if it gets to a point where the potential benefits and life saved and cities not destroyed outweigh the potential risk, then yeah, it's definitely worth it because hurricanes are deadly.
Okay.
Yeah, pretty much.
Now,
So,
but decide this though. What's deadlier? The chances of, or the chances of, this same situation happening in Project Storm Fury, where, innocent people would be injured and lots of damage, or the fact that a country figuring it out then has a better opportunity to use it as a weapon.
so from what I've
Well,
seen
the
about
question goes back to the same question it always is. Is it morally practical to do this, or is it immorally practical? Is it immoral? You can say the same thing about anything.
But the thing is it wouldn't fall under the same guides, pending who you're at, what country you're asking.
Doesn't matter.
No,
Are you
no.
going to save 100 lives to kill 1,000 lives? Or are you
Again.
going to save 1,000 lives to kill 100 lives?
But remember, you're looking at it as. Go ahead, Barney. Go ahead, because I knew you were going to say something.
it is literally the trolley problem, and it is literally the cumulative effect of every future storm versus what might be the effects on this one. So from what I'm reading about Storm Fury, what they thought would happen to prevent the storm is something that is happening normally to every storm, and the storm counteracts it through literally what it is. They didn't know that at the time they were making the experiment, so the effects that they thought they caused would have happened anyway. Similar to the Cirrus project that you have just showed, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Now, did their experiment hurt anybody? Well, actually, no. Did that hurricane behave in an unpredictable way? Well, yes. Did they cause it to behave in an unpredictable way? Well, very likely no, based on what we know now. Did they know it back then? No, they didn't. Right? But how do we know it now? Well, partly because they did it.
See, but I
Right?
would say
If nobody performed the experiment, if nobody looked at it, if nobody figured out what are the real things and what we expect to happen and test it and see that didn't happen, but this other thing did, we wouldn't know anything.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's the big thing I'm always trying to track and remember. And I think if anyone's kind of listened, and if you listen from the background, you notice that I'm really trying to stop bashing the idea. You know what I mean? Whatever they're wanting to do, as much as I'm bashing the motives of the people that want to do it. I think that's more where I need to be at when I'm on that realm of it. I'm still, like I said, I'm finding so many things that seem so ridiculous that I can't not talk about how I feel it's a money grab still. It's just,
So
It'd
an
be
example.
interesting to do an interview with like some of the
I'm actually gonna
researchers,
I'm trying to get
like interview some of the researchers and
I'm trying to get Jim Lee, the guy that like basically got me into this, and I get most of my start of my research from. I'm trying to get him on so I can have an interview with him. And I mean, he can go through it all. If you guys haven't been at the Climate Viewer 3D, go check it out. Go ahead.
I mean in the sense of like some of the people working on this hurricane diversion technology, like to bring like if there was an interview of them somewhere,
You're
just
breaking
kind
up.
of see what the researchers' motives are, not the instead. Because I mean, sure, I guess it's more the funders' motives, but it would be
Yeah.
interesting to see what
But see, you got to remember this. It
researchers
goes.
are working towards if they're
Kind of goes.
they're
under-
working towards.
You got to remember, it goes through two crux of this. You're looking at it. Some people look at it as researchers trying to figure this out because they want to learn how to suppress hurricanes. Then you have the Bill Gates side of it, where they want their idea worked on, their idea figured out because of the prestige they'll get being behind it.
Here's what's funny. So you live in California, right, Sean?
Yeah.
So have you ever looked into the biodome that they created to create this artificial weather system inside a dome that failed miserably?
Yep.
I mean, they can't even do that, for crying out loud.
No, they can.
So what? Okay,
See,
then
again,
why
that was-
why aren't they doing it?
First, that was a while ago. Second, I can make it rain in my room if I wanted to.
Yeah, but you cannot create an ecosystem that functions.
Why? I can't plant.
They can't do it. Science
Why?
cannot do it. They have
Why?
not been able to do it.
Why? What do you?
I don't know. You tell me why.
Wait. Yeah,
Wait,
they can. They
that's-
do it at hospitals. They go ahead.
You can create a functioning, self-sustaining ecosystem in a bottle. It's a common hobby experiment, not even an experiment.
Oh, really, Barney? So explain to me why the biodome has failed miserably.
That biodome failed because those
Yes.
researchers tried something or did something wrong.
Yeah, but it was
applied
backed
science-
by mainstream
God,
science
but
and
mainstream
funding from the
science-
government.
And they
I mean,
fucked
Jesus
up.
Christ.
Listen,
They had all the money in the
Max,
world to
Max,
create this
Max,
They
thing, and all the biggest
Max,
minds to figure this
Max,
crap out, and it
Max,
failed.
You don't think they can create a climate in a fucking biodome? Are you sure about that? You think there's only been one biodome study on Earth?
I didn't say climate. I said a functioning ecosystem.
It's just climate, creating a climate, its own climate. It's the system, and yes, they have multiple ones. A greenhouse is one.
No, that's an open system. That's
Well,
not an enclosed. But you
but
can create a hermetically closed garden, basically.
Yeah, that will
In a
eventually die
bottle
off.
without adding in any water, letting in any water in or out, air in or out. And if you pick your plants carefully enough and just let in sunlight, it will survive indefinitely. That's a common hobby project.
Totally wrong. Totally false. False
How's it-
accusations,
Okay,
Barney.
I have a question for you then.
That's actually why I joined, because my mum's had a contained bottle ecosystem that belonged to my grandmother, and it's at least, well, it's a good 10 or 15 years older than me, so it's 65, 70 years old,
Yeah, exactly.
and it's still going.
Are there humans living in that ecosystem?
No.
Oh my God! So what? You need 1,000 people
Okay,
in there
then.
too? Come on.
Don't you think that's a bit of
It
an
doesn't
equivocation,
incorporate.
Max?
It doesn't incorporate the full factor of the Earth's ecosystem. So
Doesn't
yeah,
it
you
show
can
that-
create.
does-
You can
doesn't it
create
show
a
the-
partial
Wait,
ecosystem,
time out.
but you cannot.
You want them to. You're doing what flat earthers do now. You want them to create the ecosystem equivalent to the Earth in a biodome. And then the fact that it didn't, I think it just doesn't work.
Okay, the biodome worked great.
No, it didn't. It failed miserably. I agree with you there. I agree with you in your premises. I don't agree with you in your conclusion. That one biodome failed, therefore it is impossible to construct an enclosed self-sustaining ecosystem. That does not follow from that statement, because we can build enclosed self-sustaining ecosystems.
You can buy one. I'm looking at one right now.
The point I wanted to make is it shows it works. It shows it works in principle. That was the point of those self-contained ecosystems. It shows we can do it in principle. We just haven't worked out all the nuances, but it doesn't mean that it's impossible, and it doesn't mean just because we've had a failure we shouldn't try and work out what went wrong.
Yeah, they probably went on a larger scale than
doing things on scales that we have never done them before is sometimes hard, because we don't know what's going to happen. That means that whatever experiment you're performing has the potential to fail. That failure is not a failure in the sense that, oh no, it didn't work, now we must give everything up. No, it's a failure in the mode of, oh, it failed, we need to find out why, because then the next attempt will be better. And when we work out all the glitches, we'll be able to construct biodomes on Mars or on Moon, which will be self-sustaining, right? That's the whole point. In engineering, there is a principle called fail faster. You want your first experiments to fail, because that will tell you where the limits of what you're doing are. What are the modes of failure? How you're going to correct and compensate. What you need to correct and compensate for, right? If you don't know those things, if your experiment just works first time, and then you go, yeah, it works. We can send people to Mars now with this. You don't know where it's going to fail or why. You haven't learned anything.
And I'm reading about it that they're saying there's the only two major issues that science is faced with when they're doing this is the fact that during the study there's too much abionic interaction. So the inside out, people watching, things needing to be fixed, in the outside world having to be involved. The other controversy is that the order to control the ecosystem, it might be simple monoculture or single species gardening approach. The two controversies. Yeah, it's basically saying, and this is probably the reason why it didn't work, is figuring out what works with what in that type of system. It's not like they just knew every type of plant, every type of dirt, every form of a system that they would need to be running to make it work. I guarantee you, they wrote it all down. They know what went wrong, and they know they were working on how to fix everything. And what year was that study you're talking about? Because the ones I'm seeing for these first ones,
90s.
like the early 90s. So
because I remember them doing it. That's why. I mean, the other thing as well that they're starting to look at for self-contained, sort of colony type points of view is a farming method called permaculture.
How long would they need to survive, Maxwell, for you to believe that it's possible? Because I think I found one that I don't think we even thought about.
Well, I'd like to see one that's functioning right now.
It's spinning up above our heads. It's called the ISS.
Perfect. I'm so happy
Yeah.
my brain ran on the right track. That was awesome.
Good one.
That Barney, right?
That's just a controlled environment. It's not an ecosystem.
Nope. They plant. They have things growing. They eat there. They live there. They can't leave. They're in a closed system.
Actually, Maxwell
actually,
is right here.
It's not a closed system, huh? Nope. Never mind.
It's not a closed system.
No.
It provides stuff from the outside.
Exactly. They send them air. They send them water. They take away refuse, and
they don't send them air. They have systems on there that do that. It recycles it.
It recycles it, but it's not 100% efficient, Sean. That's why they have to resupply with that.
Oh, do they really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, carbon scrubbers are only about 75 to 85% efficient.
And those carbon scrubbers need to be
Replaced.
replaced.
Is it? I'm not sure what the filters are made of, but I know the filters need replacing on occasion.
So there is a difference. There is a difference in conversation here about an enclosed system, a
Yeah.
closed system, and a self-sustaining system.
Yeah.
The biosphere is an experiment in a self-sustaining enclosed system.
Nothing from the
Meaning
outside.
that nothing from the outside is required to keep the equilibrium of the system. Meaning that the amount of oxygen in the air will not degrade. That the amount of water in the system will not degrade. That it will not get locked away somewhere or eroded or chemically bound in a way which makes it inaccessible. Now, plants themselves work in that way. They consume oxygen to metabolize sugars into energy, but they also produce oxygen by metabolizing CO2 into sugar, right? So if you give them energy, that's what they'll do. They will keep the level of oxygenation of air at a stable level somewhere.
What they're actually looking at? Aren't they looking at algae because it's actually more efficient pound for pound?
Actually, yep. I just put Maxwell. I just put that link
Sorry.
of what I was looking at in the in our side chat.
It's still actually going on. It's called Biosphere 2, and it's still going on, but people aren't living there.
Yeah, self-sustained. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the idea is so you can create a colony. Say, for instance, you've got a colony on Mars. What you want to make sure of is you've got enough time. If shit needs to be done, you have a mechanism in sort of engineering and facilities management called just-in-time maintenance provision. So that's what they're trying to work to, because we know what the round trip to Mars is on a good case. And we need, if we're going to put people on somewhere like Mars, we need to know that just-in-time replacement shit is going to get there at the right time. So they'll build an ecosystem to a contingency where they know the mean time to failure, which means that they're going to assume less than that, and that's going to be the resupply model. But they need to get to the point where that resupply model is practical from the point of view of transport. That would be my guess if I had to say what their concerns are.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. So
Here, I posted a link to the Biosphere 2 outcomes, research outcomes that's been going on since the 90s.
I love the fact that Barney sounded a bit surprised that I came out with that.
I'm surprised you're not into that, Sean, because that's a big factor in the global warming and all this other crap that they're trying to figure out the effects of, like acidification in the ocean for one. That they're studying in this Biosphere 2, and there's all kinds of stuff that they're studying. Look it up. I just read it.
They're looking at I haven't read it, but my supposition would be they're looking at the sort of the water content of what's going through there, the process to recycle it, and whether that's actually causing an acidification problem. Because if they're going down the algae route, then the algae route, green algae does not like acidic water. Red algae does. The trouble with red algae is it produces, I think, some sulfur outs. Okay, not very good at this bit. Yeah, so that will cause a problem, obviously, and then create an imbalance in the equilibrium of any biosphere that you would want to have. Mm. Mm. Yeah. It, well, no, I think it's more looking at the fact because it's a contained biosphere, it gives us sort of like a stochastical kind of model to play with. So what they can do is based on the inputs and outputs, they can change what's changing within the model. That will allow them to make inference. So it's not like they're trying to, I would not suspect they're trying to guide the model towards that end, but they're recognizing as that is an attribute they want to be looking for within that model outcome.
Yeah, but the problem is for every question you ask, you get 10 more questions. So, I mean, it
You should
really
get
goes nowhere.
You should get 1,000
Yeah,
more
that
questions
does.
to get
Yeah,
somewhere.
that's the most amazing part of being alive, Maxwell. That's why I don't want to die, because I've got so many questions I want to answer. And every time I answer a question, I have more.
And it never
By your
stops.
logic, if we never taught our kids the concepts of questions, they would have everything sorted out because they would have no more questions.
Well, who said we weren't going to teach our kids questions?
You
No, but
It was
yeah, I'm just following your reasoning to its natural conclusion.
No, my
Never
reason
ask any questions,
it was just an opinion that when you ask one question and answer it, you get 10 more questions. I didn't say
Yes.
you shouldn't ask a question.
Yeah,
I just said it
the
seems
way
like it's
you said
going
it-
nowhere.
the way you said it
Yeah,
is very depressing.
that's
I
the
didn't say
process
it's
of
going nowhere. I said it seems like it's going nowhere. I didn't say
okay,
you should
okay,
not
okay,
ask
okay.
questions.
Yeah, I
Okay,
know, but
okay.
that's how we all took that sentence, Maxwell. So if one of us sort of said you thought that, and the rest of us went nah, if even one of us said no, we agree with Maxwell, but at the moment everyone's saying no, that was seen as a very negative kind of statement. You may not have meant it negatively, and I'll accept your explanation.
Maxwell, you're always negative. You know this.
I'm not always negative. I try to be positive because you live a healthier life being positive.
Did you just hear
Are
yourself?
you being negative about the concept of being
you gotta
negative?
have a balance between negativity and positivity. Otherwise, you're out of balance.
Otherwise, you end up like
And it is
Maxwell.
crazy how much you sound like the Avatar character that you have. It just freaks me out every time.
I think I've asked him if that was him or not because it really does. Weird.
By the way, if it is you, I really enjoyed a lot of the stuff you did.
No, it's not me. I
Science
think he's dead.
Science knows how to terraform, right? Not that we
No.
have ever done it.
Yeah, science thinks it knows how to terraform. Because to say we know how to terraform would, to me, say that we have worked out all the possible outcomes. And I don't believe that's true.
Because I'm trying, because the stupid rumors of Mars and all that stuff. What to me, it would take. Well, first of all, when I had looked into this years ago, I was getting numbers like they were predicting it'd take like hundreds of years to first
easy.
finish. To
Shit, it
first
takes
finish
millions of
the
years.
First, no, to fix to build and have a structure capable of functioning to do this. They haven't even started the terraforming yet. It's what I was reading. I don't know how the
I don't think we'll do it by one big mass machine. I think the way that we're going with how we're sort of compartmentalizing sort of industrial activity, I think it'll be lots of much smaller things. Because that makes to me more sense. But again, I can't see us doing anything like terraforming a planet in under 4 or 5 centuries. But who knows? I can't see that being possible just for the amount of mass that you've got to be exchanging.
Mm. with this, so See, I don't know enough about to even try to give an analogy of of terraforming. So, you were saying like that
I,
the ISS has air transported to it. In a
Hmm.
sense, if say they had a structure on Mars, couldn't they just pump a chemical that would
I would.
pre well, I'm trying to get the word pre-start the oxygen phase of it. Does that make sense? Rather than having to start a machine that would have to start
You've
doing
got
all.
to have some sort of chemical exchange from going to A to B. Um,
First, you got to have all the damn chemicals there to begin with. How do you even
yeah.
know that they're even there?
Well,
That's what I was asking about the transportation of it.
we know there's ice there. We know there's ice crystals in the atmosphere there.
Yeah, they have
So
doesn't Mars have a frozen ocean or some shit? Or
no, it's got ice caps. I don't think they've
Okay.
found a frozen ocean. It's
Okay.
just got they've just got ice caps. Most of the ice cap is actually subsurface, not on the surface.
yeah. That's
Um,
the whole point of the one that went there was to drill down.
Yeah, and it fucked up.
Did it really? God damn.
Yeah, so it was supposed to put a heat sensor about 3 meters down, so they could actually see if there's any sort of it's to detect seismic activities, but they got a surface.
You're going to
sensor.
get me into my conspiracy theories now. What's the
Oh,
deal
you
with this
haven't started?
isotope? What's the deal with this isotope that's found on Mars? It's only an isotope that's only created by by humans.
Huh?
There's some isotope in the atmosphere of Mars that they've found that is only created by what we do for nuclear reactions. It's not naturally created.
That doesn't make sense.
Makes perfect sense. There's an isotope that they have discovered in the atmosphere of Mars in abundance that is not naturally created. It's only created by, you could say, technology or
Incoming
human
link.
activity. What does it say, Russ?
Says Richard C. Hoagland, a former NASA consultant and conspiracy theorist, strongly believes alien civilizations once existed on Mars and other planets in the solar system. Appearing on Coast to Coast AM radio, Mr. Hoagland argued there's a simple photographic evidence on NASA's Viking mission to prove the claim. Mr. Hoagland said NASA photos snapped in Cydonia region of Mars shows organized. Oh no, that's the wrong one. Sorry. Following a 1983 independent Mars investigation in which he took part, the conspiracist said NASA Viking lander found evidence of anomalous isotopes on Mars. These particular isotopes are known as xenon-129, and in his opinion, strongly point towards nuclear detonations on the planet's surface. So now we need to look up.
Wouldn't that just mean something with radioactivity hot enough?
I don't know. Let's find out how xenon-129 is produced.
Well, xenon-129 is only.
I don't know.
Guys, continue on. I gotta go make my son something in the microwave real quick. I'll be right back.
Xenon-129 is produced by beta ray decay. It's got a half-life of 60 million years, and it's not fission dependent. It's a stable isotope, and you wouldn't get a stable isotope coming out of a nuclear bomb. Also, I need to have a look at the periodic table, and then we can work out where xenon-129 comes from, and then we can actually look at the main components of a nuclear bomb and work backwards from there. Sorry. Where are we? Xenons, that's one of the noble gases, isn't it? So atomic weight 54. No, that wouldn't do it.
So
I
there's
can't-
another deal I found here on that says that the Xenon 129 was evidence of a massive thermonuclear explosion on Mars in the past by Dr. John Brandenburg in a 2014 paper. Dr. Francis
I'm not-
Perrin, former chairman of the French High Commission for Atomic Energy, told the French Academy of Sciences on September 25th, 1972, that the nuclear reaction had taken place approximately 1.7 billion years ago. While many scientists, nuclear reactions on the Earth and Mars could have occurred naturally, some scientists disagree if the reactions weren't natural. Who knows? Prehistoric nuclear reactors, it says. I don't know.
Do you know that there are naturally occurring nuclear reactors on Earth?
Well, there's a disagreement in the science community whether it could be either way. So
No, as in functioning nuclear reactors as a freak occurrence of this amount of uranium under the right pressure and cooling conditions to sustain a nuclear reaction for a prolonged, like thousands of years. That's a nuclear reactor. That's the same thing that we have in our nuclear plants, right? And there are naturally occurred nuclear reactors on Earth.
yeah, I've been meaning to ask you about nuclear reactors. Like, what do they use for how does the process work? I mean, do they use what's uranium and plutonium and I don't know the reactor rods that they use? I forgot. Is it gallium or something that diffuses the reaction? And how does this reaction work?
Like
Is it just
carbon
by
rocks they do to diffuse
There are multiple nuclear processes that can be used in reactors, and there are various different kinds of reactors. The basics of it is that some elements are unstable. Their strong force, the balance between the attraction of the strong force and the repulsion of the electromagnetic force is such that nucleus will fall apart eventually, right? There is a probability that it will fall apart, and we measure that in half-time.
But is the whole process just to create an exothermic reaction for heat?
Yes,
is
it's
that
all it is. When that atom falls apart, the combined sum of the masses of its products are less than what the atom weighed to begin with, and the rest of it is released as energy, as heat.
Yeah, isn't that kind of like barbaric or cavemanish? I mean, isn't that? Because all they did was go from burning coal to creating an exothermic reaction to generate heat and steam to turn the damn turbine generators for electricity.
Yes.
I mean, doesn't that seem like kind of prehistoric still? I mean, it's a prehistoric tech.
We've also got photoelectric cells collecting solar energy. So we have multiple ways. It's not just steam now, but it's just a very efficient way of creating it. But yeah, so just to let you know, so I've gone through it. I believe that Xenon 129 is the daughter product of Actium something. I just haven't worked out what the isotope of Actium would need to be.
Actinium?
I just basically looked it up on the nucleotide table. And if I'm reading it right, which I'm not very good at this shit, so I could very well be wrong. Very, very well be wrong.
A huge portion of the general science of physics, why we know so much about physics, why physics is such a huge science when compared to everything else, is thermodynamics. This uncovering thermodynamics and how it worked was practically necessary, right? What was necessary in a practical way for steam engines and specifically for steam turbines. The entirety of physics, quantum physics, and all of the mechanics of the 20th century stemmed directly from the Industrial Revolution, from the steam engine, and from the need to make the steam engine more efficient. So steam turbines are some of the most efficient and scientifically well understood mechanisms that we have. Now, it might seem barbaric, but yes, steam turbines actually are the mechanism by which we get vast majority of our electricity. By burning rubbish, everything that is heat conversion to energy is a steam turbine. So those solar towers, steam turbines. Nuclear plants, steam turbines. Coal, gas, oil, trash burning, all steam turbines. Because we know how to build steam turbines.
Yeah, it just seems prehistoric still. I mean, especially with these solid oxide fuel cells that they have out, but they won't let out into the public.
So there is a feedback loop there, right? I would actually agree to a reasonable degree with the statement that the oil industry and the energy industry is suppressing some technologies and even some proper basic research into some technologies, such as electric cells and hydrogen cells and stuff like that, for the express purpose of making more money out of oil while they have access to oil. They know it's a battle that they will lose, but every day that they can keep that battle up earns them billions of dollars, right? So literally every second that they can delay the onset of those technologies earns somebody vast amounts of money. They have every incentive to do that.
Okay, so I've actually tracked down our missing isotope. I was wrong, actually. Xenon-129 is a daughter product of iodine-129, and iodine-129 is most commonly produced in supernovae. So I'm still not getting where they think it's from a nuclear missile or a nuclear explosion. Or, you know,
Well, there
an
seems to
atomic
be a
explosion.
confusion
Well,
of whether it could be natural or not, because it can be produced both ways. So it can be produced naturally, apparently, and it can also be produced.
I've not found anything that any of our nuclear explosions have produced Xenon-129 as an isotope as a result of a nuclear
The
explosion.
nuclear explosions create Xenon-129 in massive amounts. Here, I'll pull it up. I'll look at it.
So what I was going to say is, yes, there is an attempt to...
Xenon-135 is produced by the beta decay from iodine-135, which is produced in nuclear fission. But I can't find anything for Xenon. Hold on a second. What's that? I'll keep looking.
Okay,
Sorry,
here we go. Here it is right here. It says, in order to boost the yield of a hydrogen bomb, the bomb casing is typically made of uranium-238 or thorium. According to Xenon-129, is produced only in small amounts by normal fission, but in conventional hydrogen bomb explosion, it is produced in large amounts. So it's produced by a hydrogen bomb explosion.
So not a nuclear bomb.
I know, but that goes very far from what you were saying. It is only made by this process, or it is very indicative of... No, it's not. Come on.
No, it was just a conspiracy that I was looking into, and so Yeah, that's what the guy said, which you know, I mean, is actually false. So according to
It's
this, I mean, who
yeah,
knows?
it's not necessarily false. It is just a very foregone conclusion, right? Jumping ahead of the overlooking the obvious and apparent answers to come to an outrageous conclusion, a possible outrageous conclusion.
Have you seen that? There's some phenomena that happens. I can't remember where it is, but people were telling me about it. It looks like a green beam of light shooting out of the ocean somewhere. I'm not sure where it is, but it's a phenomenon that happens. It's supposed to be a great spectacle to go see.
The green flash.
Yeah, it's like a green flash, or it almost looks like a green searchlight is shooting up into the sky.
It happens when the sun is setting.
Yeah,
Like as the last thing that you can see when the sun is setting on an extremely clear day with clear seeing. There's actually a Jules Verne novel about it from the turn of the last century.
what the heck is it called? I'm trying to find it on the internet and I can't.
The green flash.
It's just a green flash.
Yeah. The green flash and the green ray are meteorological optical phenomena that sometimes occur around the moment of sunset or sunrise. When the conditions are right, a distinct green spot is briefly visible above the upper rim of the sun's disk.
You don't hear flat earthers talking about that stuff.
Here's something for you to weird for you to think about. So if you think between now and going back to say 10,000 BC, that means you got about 650 ancestors standing behind you. Which isn't that
What was
many.
that?
I said between now and going back to say 10, 12,000 years ago, you got about 650 ancestors that preceded you to get you to that date.
Yep.
It's one of the things that always amazes me, actually, how few generations we've had to get to where.
I love those intuition breaking factoids.
Yeah, it makes you think, because it makes you realize actually how few ancestors you have sitting behind you. You don't have to have that many to get back to quite an ancient date.
What always gets me is looking at the scale, the size of the observable universe and our galaxy and stuff, and then you begin to realize how insignificant or small we really are. Whenever it's just.
I find it for me. I find it utterly amazing that we've been given a chance to actually appreciate something on the scale that we have in front of us.
Yes,
I just find
sure.
it, and the fact that we can question it, I just find that utterly amazing. I think it's the most magical thing I can think of, the most unlikely thing to happen that I can think of. that we would be here now, being able to appreciate and try to understand, you know, the universe, which is just so freaking massive. It makes me feel quite special rather than just rather than insignificant. Makes me feel lucky. But I'm an annoyingly positive person at times. Guys, I've got a book because I've got to get ready for work for tomorrow.
Toodaloo. Thanks.
Take care,
Take
buddy.
it easy.
Take care, Max.
Take care.
And now it's just you and me, Max.
I don't have any new conspiracies.
Damn it.
I did see something on Hawaii this morning. They're talking about how Hawaii is being used as for testing for all these GMOs and fertilizers, and how they're trying to create these resistant strains of vegetables and that have their own pesticides built into them, and then how it gets transferred from the plant to the human, and it never goes away. And there's some chemical that's found in people now that's, I don't know. That's my new interesting thing.
The ethics of GMO is an interesting topic, to say the least.
Yeah, I think Monsanto, I think it was chlorophyll that's being found in foods and stuff. Chlorophyll.
Chlorophyll? Well, why would
Yeah.
chlorophyll be a problem?
I don't know. They use it in pesticides and insecticides.
No. That you're messing up your terms.
It might not be
Chlorophyll,
chlorophyll. It might be something
Yeah.
else.
something else, definitely. Every green plant, every plant of any kind that does photosynthesis contains chlorophyll. That's the green organelle within the plant cell that converts sunlight, carbon dioxide, and water into sugar and oxygen. Right? That's literally what we all live off of. So it's not chlorophyll; it's something else.
Yeah, now I got to look for it. Oh, it was glyphosate.
Ah.
That's what it was. It's found in cereals and breads and wheats and.
Nutrition in general is one of the areas of research which is kind of really failing in communication and understanding, and where there's as much pseudoscience as there is science, or more pseudoscience being popularly known than science, and the science itself isn't very clear. We don't really know what we should eat. Like It's one of those things that, like, it's really relevant. It affects every single body on the planet, every living thing on the planet, and we just don't get it. We don't know enough.
Yeah. Guess we'll find out over time, right?
Or not.
Yeah.
If we go instinct, if we go, what's the word? Extinct before we find out, we'll never find out.
There you go. But back to Sean's weather modification stuff. Do you actually think they can do any? Like I don't believe that they can actually affect the weather on any massive scale, like everybody thinks they can, or all the conspiracies say they can create hurricanes and typhoons, and I just don't believe that they have the capability to do that yet.
I don't. Yeah, yet is the operative word there. Now, is it possible in principle? I think it is. I think we should keep researching into what we can do and how we can do it and what would be the consequences of that. But I don't think anybody in the world has neither the knowledge nor the capability of actually doing it deliberately.
I'm back, guys. Sorry about that. Doing what delivery?
That's okay.
Sorry to be jumping in out of nowhere.
Well, I made a statement that I don't believe that anybody or any government or organization or whatever you want to call it has the capability of affecting the weather on a massive scale the way that the conspiracies are put out there that they can create hurricanes or steer hurricanes or create typhoons or...
Why not?
Because I just don't believe they have the technology to do that yet. It's just on a massive scale.
Well, everything we were talking about was the 40s and 50s. Why wouldn't they be able to advance their technology and understanding of it in the 70 years, 80 years that they've been doing it? And then if we're talking on how much it affects, I don't think they've tried to seriously geoengineer the world. Everything's been pretty local.
Because if they could, they would no longer be dropping bombs. They would be using weather modification to wipe out, create massive genocide.
Can't do it. There's a treaty that explicitly says you cannot use weather as a weapon, because they did it in the Korean War or in Vietnam War. It's called the INMOD.
You really believe a treaty is going to stop some evil entity of doing that?
Yeah. And
yes.
And overall, yeah. Now the idea of knowing that a natural disaster or due to weather, obviously, was man-made or not, is the issue. That's the crux of why it's one of the main reasons they made it a treaty. They made this treaty because of the fact that it's so hit or miss, because it's not so 100% known how it works. They have to.
Sean, you do realize that treaties only work. The treaties that America signs only work for America. All the other countries that sign it aren't going to follow that treaty.
It's not a U.S. treaty. It's a UN treaty. And
you really believe that China is going to follow a United States or a UN treaty?
Yes, because China doesn't want us to do the same to them.
You're sorely mistaken.
No,
it's the same thing as it is the mutually assured destruction scenario, right?
Yes, 100%.
That's the same reason somebody does it, everybody necessarily has to do it, and if everybody does it, there is no more world to be ruled.
Which is also another reason why they haven't done any mass geoengineering. That's one of the big issues they have, because they're coming up with all these geoengineering methods to solving the global warming. The problem is who polices it. Who makes sure no one uses it as a weapon? It's a very big situation. The idea that they can't, man, that's 20 years ago, dude. Cloud seeding alone debunks what you just said.
Oh, I agree with him in respect of I don't think they can. I don't think that due to the treaties, due to the lack of proper research and experimentation, there isn't sufficient knowledge to do it in a controlled way or to do it deliberately or to know what's going to happen. Now,
But see,
can
that's
somebody
what I've been
go?
saying.
Now, wait. Can somebody go and just drop a bunch of silver iodine somewhere east of the coast of Japan in an attempt to attack Japan? Sure, they can, right? Will that cause a hurricane? Nobody knows. Will that cause right? That's the whole. That's the crux. But again, in the concept of some evil entity, which is small enough to remain hidden, but has resources large enough that they can affect global weather, doing it in a controlled way such that it is not obvious to everybody and like planet-wide news the instant it happens. No. I'm sorry. No.
Yeah. Well, see, that's the thing, though. They do these field studies, and it's basically just the real deal downsized. They can cloud seed. They know what it takes to do the geoengineering. It's not about if they can or not. It's 100% whether or not ethically, legally, feasibly is should they do it. It's not, the technology is not the issue. The know-how isn't even an issue anymore. It's literally needing that permission. And if it's at that point, it's definitely doable. It's cloud seeding on a much bigger scale. And it's not cloud seeding on a bigger scale. I'm just saying in the sense of they have the technology now to start doing that. Why couldn't they just ramp cloud seeding up? Because that's what it is, really, making the climate or altering the climate rather than just altering the local climate. Because and to say they can't steer them, well, we know frequencies and these and different type of machines that they have. They can physically move objects with frequencies. Am I wrong?
They can physically move.
You sound like me.
So basically, what I'm saying is, where a hurricane, it's everything to do with the atmosphere in that system. Frequencies, for instance, like the HAARP heaters, they couldn't affect that area around the hurricane.
No, they couldn't.
Why?
Look, calculate fucking HAARP's energy output and see what the effect of it is.
I think it was like, well, I know what they were pushing for. I'm not going to give you a number of exact, but hang on. I'll find a patent that I have that explains it, just explains how it works and what it would take in their guides when they make it.
It heats up a certain layer of the atmosphere. That's all it does.
Yeah, but hang on. Because they 40 years ago, they were developing patents for controlling hurricanes with frequencies. I mean, what's the point of coming up with that?
Oh, so first of all, the statement controlling hurricanes with frequencies is a woo statement. A frequency is number of occurrences per second, right? Not number of occurrences per second per unit of time. That's what a frequency is. So controlling weather with frequencies, if you don't say what those frequencies are, what those occurrences are, what those events that you're measuring in frequencies is, you haven't said anything.
Okay, I'll
right?
that real quick. Yep, yeah, 100%.
So if you have a drum and you hit it with a drumstick, You're producing frequencies. You're not going to change weather with frequencies. You need to say what those frequencies are. Frequencies of electromagnetic radiation, sure, that's a completely different thing, right? HARP sends microwaves, light in a certain frequency range to heat up a certain ions in the magnetosphere, in the upper atmosphere, not in the magnetosphere, sorry, in the ionosphere, in the upper atmosphere, right?
Mhm.
It dissipates with distance, it spreads out, it has a minuscule amount of output that gets dissipated by the time it reaches anything that it can affect. So its effect is truly minimal. Now, what the original author of HARP was proposing is that it could in some way create
Yeah.
conduction in the magnetosphere, which has never been proven, and the experiments didn't confirm this.
Wait, what?
Right?
Why? Well, let's get that out. The HARP didn't come out to control weather. Their idea was that they can control this. They can control the areas where this weather is produced, where the frequencies of radio transmissions from other countries are being emitted. If they can stop that, if they can control that area, that's what they were meaning when you hear that we can control the ionosphere. I'm just throwing that out there real quick. But what I'm showing right now is a patent that does it with, and I get what you're saying. When I say frequencies, such a broad spectrum of frequencies that, yeah, I get, but I definitely would have to be more specific on what I'm saying.
Waves on the seas have frequencies. It
Yeah.
matters what the frequency is of, right?
Yeah.
What is it that's oscillating?
Yeah, it was the way I said it. I 100%. I see that now. But right here it says, so this is the patent that I had seen that I was trying to suit or explain. It says the method of disclosed for affecting the formation and direction of a low atmospheric weather system. Audio generators are positioned to project sound waves towards a perspective area of a weather system. The sound waves are generated at God damn it, did I really just do that?
So it's the frequency of sound waves that has nothing to do with HARP.
No. I'm not correlating those. I'm not correlating them.
Okay, good.
I'm just saying in general the fact of controlling it. This method wouldn't be something that would be a feasible idea, or not a feasible idea, but now that it's better explained like it's supposed to be, does it make more sense to what I was saying?
Okay, so one thing that you need to take into account when you're listing patents, do you know, so there is a thing which is not a requirement for patent.
Yeah, a lot.
And that's visibility, right? If you want to patent the method for altering weather with your farts through a transparent plastical tube, you can patent that. And anybody who wants to use your farts through a transparent plastic tube to alter the weather needs to pay you money for using your patent. Whether or not it can be done, whether or not you can actually modify weather patterns with your farts through a transparent plastic tube is completely irrelevant to the patent.
Yeah, but so when I'm looking for these type of things, one of the things I like to find out is the background and where it came from, because I 100% what you said. There are guys that literally just think tank things out of their brain to patent just in case. But not all these patents come with backgrounds, and some of these backgrounds have the field tests or the studies that they did to come up with these hypotheses, I guess, of how it would work. I guess until we know for sure, that's what it would be. But I mean, the reason I feel the way I do about these things is they've made very clear, whether it be declassified information or information that normally just don't look deep enough into to see. But I mean, they do stuff. I would say this patent isn't a patent that is a think tank just in case someone figures it out. We'll have our fingers in it. I just don't see that it being that way. NOAA and all these other agencies they do a lot of research into this. Homeland Security did a whole fucking workshop on hurricane control.
Yes, of course they did.
So I wouldn't see why something like this isn't feasible. Why couldn't these sound waves actually do this?
Maybe they could. Has the research been done to prove that they do?
Prove? I don't think they would put that out there like that. I think this would be a situation.
Well,
of the
did you
same
look at?
aspect.
Did you look and
I think
see
this
the
thing- I think
required
this would be the
amount
same-
of energy?
I think this would be the same situation of what they're not going to put everything out there for safety for
Did you look and
I-
see the
for-
required amount of energy to do any significant change in weather? They say that it requires 1 billion watts of power. Do you know what a
It's in
billion
here.
watts is, Sean?
Okay, is it 1 billion watts?
They say to make any significant change, they would need 1 billion watts of energy being transmitted from the HARP antenna to the
No,
atmosphere.
stop. We're not talking HARP. We're talking hurricane control with sound waves. Where does it say it takes 1 billion watts?
Where does it say it takes any watts? Maybe we
Well,
can
I'm
do
just-
it for free.
Okay, so if we're reading through this and it's explaining the method of doing this,
Yes.
then I can only ask you what in this summary and description of what this is it far-fetched?
You're trying to counteract something with sound.
They do it with.
Can you
with
imagine the
crowd
amount of
dispersing.
power? Imagine the amount of power you would need to generate the amount of sound
I will tell
you're
you
going
exactly how
to
much.
need to counteract
It
the
says
forces of
it
a
says a
hurricane.
method according to Claim 2, where it said sound waves are projected at a frequency range of 100 to 2,000 hertz. I think that's hertz, right?
That is not power, that's a frequency,
Okay.
right?
You're still going to
How
need
much
a
power? How
massive
many-
speaker
Hang on,
or amount of frequencies
He's trying- Max,
to
he's trying
generate
explain-
this
Max,
frequencies.
He's trying
Hello?
to explain. Yeah, he's trying to explain it to me. Can you let him finish explaining it to me?
Okay, so you can produce a sound of that frequency at 1 decibel, at 0.1 decibel, at 10 decibels, and 100 decibels, right? Not every sound of that frequency has enough power to affect a hurricane. That's literally the right.
That's what
If
I'm
you
getting
are-
at here,
Yeah,
Marty.
you're just-
You're going to need
Max,
a billion
you are
decibels.
literally yelling and talking over people to say something. It doesn't work.
That's because you're not understanding how much energy is going to be
Because
required to
I
do
don't
this.
understand it because you're talking over the person explaining it to me. Stop for a second, please.
Now, at some level, the amount of energy in decibels is like decibels and watts are equivalent. Decibels is just the amount of energy contained in a sound wave. You can use a sufficiently loud sound to create a black hole. Will that affect a tornado? Yes. So there is some limit between a fart and a sound that will create a black hole, which will definitely affect tornadoes. Right?
Hmm?
What is the scientific research? What is the background that says whether this is feasible? Whether we as humans can produce enough watts of sound energy to affect a tornado, to affect a hurricane, that we can control it, right? Or is this the same thing that Feynman was talking about? Hey, give me all of your ideas because we need to patent everything that you can come up with if you're a scientist working for the government, because everything that you come up with needs to be owned by the government for us to research it. Because if a private person registers it, we no longer have access to it, and this is the U.S. military, right? You know that Feynman was at some point the world's leading expert on nuclear planes because they literally said, tell us every idea that you have that nuclear energy can be used for, and then sell that patent for $1 to the US government. And he just sat down and listed submarines, nuclear rockets, nuclear planes, and they said, well, these others were already taken. Somebody gave those ideas, but the plane and the rocket are yours. So he held the patent for the nuclear plane. At that point, was there any feasibility of a nuclear plane existing? No, not at all. There was nobody ever even looked into it. It was an idea that Feynman had on the spot when asked the question. Right? So a patent is not any statement of this is feasible. This could even in theory exist. Right? This is just something that was patented.
But you can't say that
If
about
that
every
gets
patent.
created, then that patent becomes relevant.
But you wouldn't be able to say that about every patent, though. Like, I get what
wouldn't.
you're saying. I get what you're saying, but and I'm 1,000% sure you've looked through different patents before, and there are patents that are very, very detailed in what they're discussing, and then there's those patents that are like, you're looking over here and it's got like 1.5 claims. Like, I see that, but I mean, again, we're looking at one patent, and if we know that the power that a hurricane can produce, we would only need what is it to figure out what it would take to alter that.
Yes.
So,
But they don't need to even know any of that. They don't need to know what a hurricane is to submit a patent.
Okay, but in 2001, I'm pretty sure they knew what a hurricane was, what a hurricane's the force of a hurricane would be. So to say that this patent could be one of those, I'm honestly, I can't see myself leaning anywhere besides this being a feasible patent. I don't see where it would not be. I mean, I wouldn't even need to have all those numbers and calculations and understanding of it to basically go, would these sound waves at the right decibel?
Now,
right? Decibel
there is,
I want.
so, plausibility. Yes, there is no reason for this patent not to be valid. There is no reason for this patent to be valid. This is a patent. You are bringing this patent as an evidence, as a confirmation of your statement that we can affect weather, right?
It's a building block of evidence.
Yeah,
I would not present this as my only evidence. No.
So, and my statement is, well, if it was evidence, if this was a feasible method, then there would be a scientific paper that you can relate to this and show that it's possible. I'm not saying that no such scientific paper exists. I'm saying it might as well exist. If it exists, then you're right. Then that is the evidence. But the patent itself, you can put out a patent for anything. There are, like, the vast majority of patents are things which are impossible to make.
Just in case.
Just in case somebody figures out, because things that were considered impossible to make have been made. Right?
Hmm?
By new physics being uncovered, by new scientific research. And if you get lucky, you have it. And in the case of the government, I know you know that example with Feynman, right? They literally do that to cover their ass in every eventuality and get everybody on board. And there is a standard form contract where they get $1 for literally every idea they come up with within one sentence. So bringing up that patent exists doesn't prove or disprove anything. It says somebody had this idea.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, somebody had that idea. That does not tell me that that idea is not even in the scope of reality. Get it?
Yes and no. I get where you're coming from, 100%. Maybe it's because I feel like I've looked into this enough that, again, like this isn't, I wouldn't present this alone. But we know they've applied this idea, not this idea, the idea of controlling a hurricane in multiple situations. I don't see why in 2001, logically, they wouldn't have a better idea of what they're doing. If not to the point where they've done field tests, they may be even using it now, for all we know.
And do you think that if any of these patents were actually feasible, that China would give a shit about the patent?
You don't think China has 1,000 patents too? You don't think China does these things? China is full-blown cloud seeding and weather modification. You know that, right? And that doesn't
Like
mean
I was saying, do you think China gives a shit
Hang on.
whether we have a patent on
doesn't
something,
mean-
whether if it's feasible?
Yes, 100%.
No bullshit.
Why? So you're telling me
Because it's a U.S. patent.
So you're telling me if they saw a patent for hurricane control, they have no reason to think they need to figure some shit out?
Oh, for fuck's sake, Sean! Just think about what you're saying.
Yeah, I'm saying. Okay, so
Wait. Let me just sketch out a single little scene. The U.S. is running the Manhattan Project, and they put out a patent. Oh, the nuclear bomb. And no country in the world goes, dang it, they patented it first. Right?
correct. No. Yeah. No. Okay, then maybe how Max said it came across differently to me. Yeah, I thought of it as more like China doesn't give a fuck about hurricane control. That's
No.
from them.
China doesn't give a fuck about the U.S. patents.
Well, they care if they're applying it.
If it was a feasible patent, China would copy it and use it.
Bullshit. And how do you know they don't? We were talking about United States is talking about wanting to use solar or space-based solar energy. That came from patents too. Japan's doing it now. Saying that doesn't make sense to me at all. Saying like the idea that patents are just bullshit.
Well, patents can be a disinformation tool as well.
Yeah,
so.
but they also can be applied. Everything that's applied has patents.
Everything that's applied has patents. And yes, there are patents in application right now. And if that thing is in application and a patent exists for it, the evidence for that thing is that thing. It's not the patent of it existing. If it works, you have that thing, right?
Yes.
It is a fallacy to conclude the reverse. If a patent exists, then that thing might exist. Why? Because you can put out a patent for I love bringing up farts. For using your farts for dyeing other people's hair into the color neon green, right? The patent does not say that the thing is even remotely possible. It says that if somehow it is done, I thought of the idea first.
But I get that.
So it's not evidence of anything.
Wait, it is. How is it not? So you're telling me if 10 years from now they come out and say, "Hey, we can control hurricanes," that patent was still shit? Those patents, patents, whether or not they part of it works or it's just a hypothesis, regardless, it's still stepping stones to these think tanks of how to do it.
No. How are you not seeing this?
I have
right?
No clue.
If I put out a patent for my hair dyeing farts, right, and somebody comes up with a way of dyeing hair with farts, then that patent is relevant because I thought of the idea first, and they have to pay me homage or pay me licensing fees.
But Barney, when you use a situation
When,
as
when
like
you
that,
put out
but-
when you put out a patent, you can put in whatever you can think of. Now,
isn't it a
whatever
little
you can think
disingenuous
of,
to use a example like that rather than say a way to pump water uphill so people can drink water? That doesn't sound the same thing as farts that will change your hair color. Like, I get it if it's something that is that far fetched, but
yes.
this
So
isn't
the
something like we're in the era where we're trying to control
okay,
weather. We're doing things that do
let's
that.
let's use your example. Okay, a patent for pumping water uphill so that people on hills can drink water, right?
Hmm?
The evidence for that being feasible is not in the patent existing. It is in that thing being done.
Okay, but it's if
You do not get to say the patent exists, therefore it's possible that the thing.
I'm not saying because I'm looking at that patent they can control hurricanes. I look at that patent and I look at other patents and I look at which of those hurricane control patents are more feasible. And if that's the case, what is looking for more into it and all this other stuff and having an idea what the government's doing with it? Why is it all of a sudden just far-fetched? Because you're telling me because I see a patent that says they can that's a method for controlling hurricanes, that it's ridiculous of me to have a thought in my mind that it's being done or can be done. They're talking about doing geoengineering, and the method of geoengineering they want to do.
I don't think it can be
solar
done.
radiation management.
I don't believe.
The method of solar radiation management it's feasible. They can do it. Whether or not it's economically it will make sense, it doesn't make a difference. The thing is I don't understand, and this is just with this is a lot of stuff like when it comes to technology in general. At what point are they able to start doing stuff? Because this is kind of like the whole they can't go to space. Well, they've been quote unquote trying for 80 years. At what point would they be able to? So when I look at a patent, I'm not telling you they control hurricanes because I'm looking at this patent. I say they can control hurricanes because of all the 60 years they've been trying. The 60 years that they've had multiple ideas of how it could be done. That's what I'm looking at. The patent is just one piece of evidence that got me to start.
Well, for 100 years they've been creating cars that can't get
going into controlling a hurricane.
So let me try to be amicable. What a patent is evidence for is that somebody is thinking of it, that somebody is trying to solve that problem, that concept is relevant to somebody. I agree with that.
I'm confused because I'm getting the same sense from you two as I am from people in the chat. At no point am I saying that patent that I showed you guys means hurricane control is happening. Not one part of it. I don't know why. I don't know. It has to be the way I explained it. I don't know. But to make it clear, I do not use that patent as my evidence, as my verification they are doing it at all.
Okay, I seriously need to rewind the conversation and see what was the original argument you brought up the patent in support of. Because as far as I remember, it was in support of frequencies can be used to modify weather.
Yes.
Here's a patent that shows that frequencies can be used to modify weather.
No, okay, then that's where it was. First of all, I don't know enough about it to give you this is being done and this is exactly how, it's literally just a stepping tool into more research of controlling hurricanes and of all the other ideas that I've read, which I've read some, and I know what you mean about those patents. I've read patents with hurricane control that you can tell are just so ridiculous that it wouldn't even make sense to even fund it at all.
So when we're talking about evidence of people being interested in that, yes, patents are relevant. When we're talking about that being feasible, I would need scientific papers or functioning what's it called, units or examples of it being done, right?
But they are interested in it. They have been continuously
They
doing
are
research into
interested.
doing it.
Yeah.
That doesn't validate not validate as
Why?
in how.
Why are they interested in doing it, Sean? Why are
Originally,
they interested in doing it?
the reason they wanted to start the first agency, speaking of we should control the weather, was the military. Why? As a weapon.
Okay, so we've established that they want to weaponize it, correct?
Okay.
So why would they want to stop it from happening if it's not cost
For
effective
one, they need to know.
to produce enough energy to manipulate this hurricane
What?
versus it's cheaper to just clean up after the hurricane. So why would they want anything other to do with stuff other than weaponize it?
How to suppress a hurricane? It is far cheaper to do that than to clean
How
up
do you
the
know?
mess.
How do you
Are you
know?
serious? Death,
Exactly.
unknowing amount of damage. What? Really? That doesn't even make sense.
Maxwell has list. No, that's the whole point. Until you know the method, you don't know the cost.
Okay,
The
but
cost, right?
then I'm not
so
talking that way only. Hurricane control in general is what I'm talking about. And I'm not saying they do it like they're like the hurricane hit land because they wanted it to. No, it's pretty much like cloud seeding. Hit or
there
miss.
there
Don't
are
really know.
things that cause immense death and suffering in the world and immense economical damage that we know the solution to and would be preventable, except we do not have the resources or we are unwilling to apply the resources that we have to solving that problem. For example, malaria, which is a huge detriment both economically and in human life that we have a cure for.
Why haven't we
And are
eradicated it?
unwilling to apply the resources to do that, to solve that problem.
See,
Do you understand?
And maybe I get what you're saying, but to me, it's weird because what I'm hearing is basically these are feasible reasons to have patents and feasible reasons to think that these things work, but I'm not understanding where or why hurricane control is suddenly just this taboo thing. Like, why is it not like?
No, it's not. It's not a taboo thing. It's not a matter of it is logically impossible, right? It is not a matter of oh, you don't need to think about this or worry about it, and nobody's ever going to do it. Those are not the statements that I am trying to make. I'm trying to say that undue worry about a thing which is unknown on the mere possibility of it being, or on somebody's mere interest in it, when we can kind of estimate that it is such a hard thing and such an over-encompassing thing to accomplish, that I don't think it's feasible to say, well, somebody has figured it out and they just haven't told us.
Why? They
Or
do it with technology all the time. They suppress technology all the time from us until they're done using it or it's at a point where it's actually feasible to get it out to the public. There's stuff that we don't know about. There's stuff that we don't think is possible that they do on a regular basis. So to say that is kind of, you can't say that either.
There is a difference. There is a difference between an application of existing technology and something which is not even theoretically known yet. Right?
I would assume that controlling a hurricane, it's theoretically known. It's not. They know the basics of a hurricane. They know how these certain applications could work with it. What is the difference between that and launching a rocket into space?
You far overestimate how complex of a topic meteorology is.
I guess it'd be the same complexity as someone thinking going to the moon.
No.
Why?
No,
You think going to the moon is easier than understanding a hurricane and how to modify a
Yes,
hurricane.
immensely,
don't see how.
immensely. Even on the basics of mathematics, right? The mathematics of rocketry are just literally Newtonian physics. You don't need anything more than that to go to the moon.
But we also, when we went to the moon, we didn't know what to expect either. It was literally a coin toss.
Yeah, it was. But to go there, you need Newtonian physics, classical physics, deterministic, expressible in like all of rocketry can be expressed in a sum total of maybe 4 formulas, if that many, right? Maybe even 2 is enough. When you
It's not
when you
that-
talk about hurricanes, when you talk about weather, when you talk about climate, you're talking about fluid dynamics on massive scales. You're talking about chaos theory of mathematics. You're not talking about things which can be easily solvable. We do not have computers existing on Earth that can model weather accurately. Our prediction models are like 80% accurate within 2 or 3 days in advance. We can model rocket orbital mechanics for literally millions of years in the future without needing to take into account general relativity in for most of it.
So basically, for hurricane control to be feasible to you, they have to say they can do it.
Well, when you say hurricanes are understood, they are understood
No,
on
no.
a very
I didn't mean. I know I didn't say they completely understand it, but they have a base understanding of hurricanes. I know that. That's pretty simple. I mean, I don't think they'd be
what
flying planes
is a
through them.
base understanding. Can they predict
It's-
when a
it's-
hurricane will
it's-
occur?
Yeah,
No.
yeah. Why do you think they watch tropical storms? They can tell what the intensity of a tropical storm can become. Literally, they predict them. They
A
tell people
tropical
watch out.
storm is a hurricane.
Okay,
No,
Sean, can I
A
say
hurricane
something real
tropical
quick?
storm is not the same thing.
This will debunk your whole hurricane theory.
I'm sure it will.
The amount of energy generated by a hurricane,
It does not need to
is
generate the same amount.
the amount of energy.
Yes, but do you have a model?
Did you even look at how much energy is generated by a
study
hurricane?
So no, I don't know exactly how much it would take.
Okay,
to do
well,
it,
so
but
so
there's
for
other
you to
people
be
that
able to
do.
control
I'm
a
guaranteeing
damn
you
hurricane,
don't either, Max,
you would
so
need to
tell
at least come up with
Jesus
a
fucking
fraction
Christ.
of the energy generated,
You need to come
which
up
is
with
the
and
energy
tell me
generated
what's
by
the
half
fraction.
the damn planet.
What will it take? What will it take? And it doesn't take half the fucking planet for a
It'd take
hurricane
all
to
the
happen.
energy generated on the
Shit.
entire planet to change the freaking
Are you fucking
course of a
kidding me?
hurricane. For
You think it
Christ's
takes
sakes.
that? You take. Show me the numbers, or are you just saying numbers right now? Because you're telling me you're debunking what I think because I don't know the numbers. Do you know the numbers, or are you just throwing numbers out of your fucking mouth right now? Because I'm telling you right now, I don't believe it takes half the fucking the Earth's energy to do anything to do with a fucking hurricane that is this tiny on the Earth. Now, again, show me some numbers that you just said that debunk what I said. Because the whole reason this, I think, has got to this is that you're jumping in and you made it like I said, hurricanes are controlled. Period. I've never said that.
Okay,
I never said
you've
once
never
that a
said
patent
that,
does that
and
either.
okay, we misunderstood each other at the very least.
And the biggest thing of
We
all,
said that they have the technology to control hurricanes.
So the fuck what? So I'm supposed to know everything about it. So that means you're not going to say a damn word.
We
about
just
it.
said you didn't
No.
say that, but you've been saying that.
No, them having Jesus Christ. So if they have the means to modify a hurricane, they don't have the technology. Because I can show you the NOAA reports that they published, that they put out of them doing it. Like you're acting like they've never done any of these tests or never tried, you act like these patents are from yesterday and they're all just came from a fucking Smurf cartoon. They've been trying to modify shit for a very long time. So at what point do they get smart enough that technology can help?
I'm not saying that they don't know. I'm saying
No,
that the
you are.
amount of energy required to
Oh, God.
manipulate a
What's the amount-
hurricane
what is the
is
amount of energy?
absolutely ludicrous.
What is the amount of energy it would take? And where's your
Well,
source from?
for what, I mean, you can look at general. I'm so frustrated with this right now. I can't even think.
Oh.
It's a simple question. Where do you get the information that you just came up with?
I posted a link in side chat. You can look at it.
Okay, so what I'm about to look at is a situation where they tried to manipulate a hurricane, and
no, it's the amount of energy generated by a hurricane.
Okay, again, what? Okay, then where is your numbers that show what it would take to affect that hurricane? Because again, you don't.
Well,
need to
obviously,
equal
you'd
those
have to
numbers.
overcome.
No,
Obviously,
you don't have to overcome
Sean, you'd
shit.
have to overcome
No,
the
you
amount
don't.
of energy.
No, you don't. Have you ever seen a deer hit a car on the side? It moves the fucking car, but the deer ain't nowhere near as big as a car. What you're saying doesn't make sense. You don't need more energy to manipulate it, to just make it do something.
Okay,
different.
so we're saying that the laws of motion don't apply here.
Okay, so explain.
Is
them
that
to
what
me.
you're saying?
Since you have it figured out, explain it to me then. Go.
So Newton's laws don't apply. You've been preaching Newton's laws
Again,
all this time, but now they don't
know
apply.
the numbers. So since you know the numbers, tell me. Debunk it like you said you were going to. Or you don't know.
Nobody
You
knows
just
the
wanna-
numbers, Sean. But
You
what
just-
you're saying
you
right
just
now
gotta tell me
is
to put
that
a
Newton's
fucking link
laws
in the
don't
chat that
apply
told
to
me-
hurricanes.
You literally
You're
just
saying
told me-
Newton's laws don't apply to hurricanes,
Just
Sean.
said you put a link in the chat that says the amount of force or whatever power a hurricane has, which you're trying to tell me is what mitigates how they can't do it.
Okay.
Which one is
so M-Stone in the side chat is saying you all are talking past each other, and I actually agree. This got heated, and it is not necessary. You did not make the extreme claim that I thought you were, and
If Max, if
there
you
is
think I
no
did,
need
I
to
can
go this
back
far.
too.
I do somewhat agree with Maxwell. I think your analogy with the deer and the car should actually tell you how much energy you need, if that's the analogy you want to use.
Yeah.
Because you can calculate the momentum of the vehicle and the momentum of the deer, the inertial momentum.
But
When you take a collision at that speed, the momentum of the car applies to the mass of the deer, and yes, it will get deflected. Now, those momenta need to be proportional. How do you get the total momentum of a hurricane? You take its energy content. So you need something that's comparable, that's at least on the same scale as the energy of the hurricane. You're not going to fart into a hurricane and move it, right? That's too small of an energy content to move a hurricane, to affect it so that it moves, right? You agree with that statement so far?
Yes.
So something that is, you require an amount of energy which is comparable to the energy of the hurricane. Let's say even if it is 10 times smaller or 100 times smaller, it still needs to be on the same scale. It cannot be 10 billion times smaller, right? Correct. So the amount of energy contained within a hurricane, as Max was trying to point out, if you just take the energy of the wind, is half of all of the electric energy produced in the world. If you take the energy contained in the heat energy of the clouds and the mass that gets thrown about, it is approximately 12 times the all of the energy produced on the planet by humans. And you're saying that there is a feasible method of us doing some kind of weather modification that has that kind of efficiency, that somebody can covertly do it, even in principle, to affect a hurricane by using so little energy so that nobody would notice that the 10% of the planet's energy or half of the planet's energy is going to that effort.
hang on.
That were-
Now you're correlating into. I'm not bringing it into. You have to be a
Let me
secret.
just finish why. Let me just finish the statement of why that is unfeasible. If we could do something like that, we would have at our disposal the most efficient system of energy generation yet invented, which is millions of times more efficient than any kind of solar, wind, nuclear, or anything like that as far as getting energy for our usage, because we could just divert hurricanes into. Okay.
Then I have a pretty simple question. Project Citrus. Cirrus, I'm sorry. Did they not affect that hurricane at all? Yes or no?
What does it mean at all?
Well, they either could have affected it or not at all. Because the way you guys are explaining it, dumping 200 pounds of dry ice into a hurricane is not going to affect it. Period. Like they shouldn't even ever have came out and said they did it.
It is going to. So you farting into a hurricane is going to affect it.
Well, again, I'm not saying farting. I'm saying 200 pounds of dry ice. When you
200 pounds,
but when you're using that analogy, it really just cartoonicized, or it really makes it seem very kiddish, the conversation. It doesn't. Yeah, of course, farting on a hurricane ain't shit, but that's nothing compared to frequencies or adding something to it to manipulate it. Because again, that's.
Did you say 200 pounds?
I meant tons. I'm sorry. Or I don't know. Let me get that number back. I don't remember right now, and I'm a little angry. Yeah. Hang on. Where did I put it?
They dropped nearly 80 pounds of crushed dried ice into the clouds. 80 pounds.
I don't know. I saw 200. I was looking at. Hang on. I'll find it again. Let me get the link back up. That's the one that I found. Conspiracy. So. Says the Office of Naval Research, October 13th, 1974, 47, 200 pounds of dry ice were dropped throughout the storm, then located, it was 350 miles offshore of Jacksonville, Florida.
Okay, I have October 13th, 1947, on a hurricane that was heading west to east out to sea. An airplane flew along the rain bands of the hurricane and dropped nearly 80 pounds, 36 kilograms of crushed dried ice into the clouds. One of our sources is wrong, but it doesn't matter. So I weigh 240 pounds. So we're talking about less than me. Okay. They saw.
I mean, if you look at all the hurricanes in the
Jesus
past,
fucking
they
Christ.
all
saw-
divert
they saw-
east. So how
What the
can they
hell
make
is
a
that?
conclusion that it changed east from dropping ice in the freaking
Max,
clouds?
can I ask something? Have
Wait.
you ever looked at
That's
the
what the article
patterns of
said.
have you looked at the patterns of hurricanes over the past 2 decades? Have you seen it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So then, can you show that to me? Because again, I can look at it right now.
They all
I have
divert.
them right
Do
here.
they not all divert to the east?
John, before
No,
you let
it's
him
not the point.
derail this, we were in the middle of a conversation. Can we please first finish that conversation and then move on
Yeah.
to whatever Max wants to talk about?
Yes.
So-
Absolutely.
So after they did that, they saw clouds forming at the spot where they dropped the dry ice, and the hurricane took a detour, right?
Yes.
And they were sued because one person died, and there was significant damage in Savannah, Georgia, where it made landfall. The project was canceled. We're in agreement so far, right? Okay, so then there was a subsequent hurricane. No, it's not a subsequent. They found that a previous hurricane in 1906 had taken a similar part without being affected by anything. So hurricanes take that path by themselves. And
Okay.
the evidence showing that the storm had already begun to turn when the seeding began, right?
Okay. Again, just
So-
we're clear on the argument, I'm not saying they did that. That's just effect of what I'm seeing. The same way cloud seeding works. They do it. How much is it actually affected? I don't know. I can only tell you what I've seen. What they give me.
Yeah.
Again,
So
I think
what I-
100% of this argument got where it's at now because of how me and Max are interacting with it. And when I get frustrated, my numbers start getting really miscued, or what I say gets really unlegible. Like you can't understand me. I know it because I don't understand me sometimes. But I want to make it
Okay.
very clear. I am not saying I know hurricane control is being done today. Period. I'm not saying that patent gives me any validation of they're doing it at all.
Okay. So, I guess so. I'll just make a closing statement on my part. Right? Everything that you have said is fine. I'm kind of combating your initial assertion that they've been doing it for 60 years, and there are obvious attempts to do it, and there is obvious research into it, and there is obvious patents, so somebody is thinking about it. But since they've been doing it for 60 years, therefore it is reasonable to conclude that somebody somewhere already knows how to do it.
Yeah, that was the anger. That was the anger of me. I don't think they've been doing. What I wanted to say, because I'm thinking now, they've been researching the aspect of controlling hurricanes for 60 years. That'd be a better way of saying it.
Okay, so my pushback on that is there are not enough even theoretical basics of us understanding weather fluid dynamics of hurricanes to base any real technology on. Like the question of how much energy would you need to modify it is currently not even theoretically answered. There is no model that answers that question. So we can attempt certain things and see what happens. I would not call that somebody can control the weather, right? If they are exceptionally lucky in their blind stab, it is possible that they might affect it somehow. We have no idea where to try. The scientific knowledge is not there yet.
I think that I agree with everything you said up until the very end. I think a lot of people. How do you say it? I guess the only way I can really say it is I adamantly believe that there is technology being applied to this day that we have no clue of yet, based on whether or not they want us to. And that alone makes it feasible. I get that it's not. I have no validation for it. I can't pass it in a court of law. I get that. But at the same time, I think walking through with blinders on with the topic is kind of why the public don't know about 99% of the shit we talk about on here at all.
Yeah, fair enough.
And I get it. I'm a conspiracy theorist. I get it. I run ahead of the game based on just the fact that that's what I do. Being a conspiracy theorist, you can't. There's no conspiracy theorist that's going, I got to wait until it's applied and they're telling us about it. It doesn't work that way.
The reason why I'm pushing back on you so hard is that as far as conspiracy theories go, like the term conspiracy theories, I've never yet heard you on this channel being what I would call a conspiracy theorist.
Yeah.
All the while until now, you have been a concerned citizen. You have been a person who is curious with valid, informed worries and questions. This is the first time that I've seen you conjecture something that isn't warranted by what we do know, right? That is just mere conjecture.
Give me this then. Give me a day. Tomorrow we'll talk about this again, even if it's in a private, offline.
Yeah, sure.
Because I definitely didn't think I was going to get this deep into it. But I mean, I do have things that I feel that validate the possibility of at some point them being able to do it. I feel they are doing everything they can to attempt to figure it out right now, and that's probably as far as I can go. Period. I mean, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I can't say when they've used it. I can't say how they've used it. I can only say I know they've been applying their asses off to get it done. And to me, I feel I have enough. But again, that's why I'd like to gather my thoughts, know that this is gonna happen, and then present it to you. Not an angry person on the fucking panel, and then go from there. Because I see what you're saying, and I'm thinking about it right now. But because I know what I've seen in all my files, I'm almost projecting all that to the one fucking patent I showed, which no one ever will do if they're trying to really construe what they're saying like that. I wasn't ready, so it'd take me forever to do it.
No, I would just look that when you're pointing things out, you would point out the best evidence that you have, right? The thing which is most convincing.
But I didn't think that was going to happen. So it literally was us talking, just having a conversation. And I don't care who you are. If you get any kind of irritated, everything gets difficult. So when you're like me, and anybody can trigger me, if you would have said, I want all your sources 20 minutes ago, I probably would end up cussing you out. and I do know for the past 45 minutes, I've been trying to make sure I only stared my anger at Maxwell. But I know I got a little irritated a couple times. But I know
steer your anger at me if you disagree with what I'm saying.
I don't.
That's all right. I still love you, Sean.
I hate you, Maxwell, because you yelled in my ear. Has nothing to do with this conversation. It's literally the way you guys do it. You have two different styles of talking to me. Max, you have a completely different style of talking. You just, it frustrates me, and then I'm listening to you, so it's like a combination of the both. Whereas in Barney's method is more of a, I'm going to explain this to you so that you realize where you went wrong in your logic, and you're trying to just tell me I'm wrong in my logic. I don't work as a human that way. I want to know. If I'm wrong, I want to know I'm wrong. I want to know how I'm wrong. I want to know where I'm wrong, and I also want to make sure that what I think is either right or wrong. That's why I never joined the military. I can't have someone yelling at me like that, telling me like that. It doesn't work. It just doesn't work.
Holy shit, Sean! You're an idiot. How do you not see it yet?
Yeah.
Right.
Maxwell, I was a flat earther.
I'm not saying you're wrong on anything. I'm just saying that.
Yes, you are.
It's just unfeasible.
Stop doing that. You did. You said I was wrong. You clearly said I was.
I mean, the
wrong.
article says. I mean, the article about that Cirrus hurricane stated that because the hurricane took a detour towards Savannah, Georgia from Jacksonville. I mean, and then later on in a 1906 hurricane followed the exact same path.
That's the problem. Because that's not what they said. They were very clear in their report. They didn't have enough evidence to equate what they did to the reason that happened.
Yeah.
They literally thought they assumed that the turn that hurricane made was odd. They did that. That's right off the bat. But again, if the last time that happened was 1906, that's probably why.
Yeah, but if you look at the map, all hurricanes divert towards the east after they come close to the land. So
diverting to the east is not a valid description of the direction, the path a hurricane takes, because they all don't take that same path. They all divert
I would
to the
say
east.
about 80 to 90% of them do, though.
No. But you saying they divert to the east is it's way too broad. Way too broad. Yeah, okay, but did they all go 10 miles off the coast of fucking Puerto Rico too? No.
Well, they all don't go straight into the land, so
I know
they
one said
don't
they
continue on into the land.
did. Well,
They
a
all
few of them have.
by
A few of them.
Huh?
Harvey did.
Well, that was a freak hurricane.
Some say. I won't get into that. I have my thoughts on hurricanes as well, but even more importantly, I have a big question. Then it would clearly be easier to piss a storm off than to suppress a storm, aka strengthen the storm, right? Basically, by adding shit to it or whatever. I don't know. I'm not even saying they do it. I'm just brainstorming right now.
Okay.
I don't think that they have
Why do you think?
done enough anything to
I
affect.
know.
They've created an effect. That's about it. But did they create a significant effect? No. 200 pounds of dry ice in a hurricane is like dropping a freaking grain of salt into a glass of water. Really, if you think about it.
Well,
They'd
we
have
all think
to-
about it, and I can tell you right now, I know it. None of us are qualified to make that assessment in that number to know exactly. None of us have those papers in front of us. And to
Just
think,
by scale, you can make that determination.
maybe they weren't. Okay, see, that's the thing. I'm not trying to say, like, I didn't say they control hurricanes. Like, they're not going, hey, Bob, I get fucking first player this time. They're not. I don't know, like, I'm not sure if you've heard this argument before where people say they control it and then there's little robots in it or something, but I don't think that. When I'm talking any manipulation of the hurricane, I don't care if it raised 3 degrees. If it's in their paperwork, it could have been 3 degrees. That's something towards that. I'm not going to just throw it out. And I'm not saying that's proof for it either. That's the issue. Max, first of all, I don't do proofs. I don't give a fuck what I'm talking about. Just I'm conditioned to only give evidence now.
Yeah.
I can't even say I can prove my name is Sean. I'll give you a bunch of evidence, all the documents I can.
Well, if that's the case, then there's all kinds of evidence that's contradictory to any evidence that's given anyways. So I mean,
what? Okay.
so
what would be that? What would be
where's the
that?
actual evidence of anything?
No, because now you're doing a flat Earth argument. Now you're doing flat Earth. What's your evidence?
Well,
that says they
it's
can't?
true. I mean,
Okay,
it's all
show
there's
me-
contradictory evidence
Show me.
to a lot of stuff.
Explain
I
it.
mean, it doesn't make it all positive.
No,
It doesn't make
show
it all
me or
proof
explain
positive.
Because then what you're saying is they've done tests that show they can't, and I don't think they've done.
Well,
that.
the tests are inconclusive. So how can you
Inconclusive
make
does
an
not
assumption
mean
on anything?
You're doing it. You're making an assumption.
No, I'm not. I'm making.
saying
Well, I
they
guess I
can't
am.
do it.
I guess I am making an assumption that inconclusive evidence is inconclusive. So I mean,
Yeah,
even
but
when
you're
they
saying-
say that
no,
their evidence is
Maxwell,
inconclusive,
2 seconds ago,
then it's
you literally said they can't, and there's evidence that they can't. That's why I asked. Show me evidence that they can't. That seems a little. That seems a little ridiculous to be doing. I don't think they would do that.
Conservation of energy and conservation of momentum.
yeah, that's what I was thinking of before. Conservation of energy is evidence in itself.
Explain
And
it.
Newton's
Because,
laws.
Again, okay. Just saying that doesn't make any sense. Because I'm gonna tell
What do
you
you
now.
mean?
What?
Okay. So let's follow. You started kind of a thought experiment or what would you use the term for it, like spitballing or something, where you said that surely it would be easier to make a hurricane more powerful than less powerful. What is your intuition on that? How did you reach that conclusion? What is your reasoning behind it?
Okay. Thinking in the sense of how do I explain it? How I was thinking it.
I would agree with that statement that Sean made.
Just in the fact that to suppress something again, I'm not saying that all the laws of Newton's laws don't count. doesn't even equate. It couldn't possibly think that way because especially 'cause I think it's a force, Riley. It would take more to stop a train than to push a train, not with your human hands. I'm just thinking in my brain, it's easier to get something going than it is to stop it, I guess. In how I'm thinking.
No,
about
it's not. It takes exactly equal amount of energy to stop a train going at 100 miles an hour than to
Well-
accelerate that train to 200 miles an hour.
Well, no,
Barring there is no wind resistance. If you
Well, see, that's-
if you account for friction and loss of energy, then it is easier to stop it than to make it go faster at some point.
well, say that then I'm thinking about it differently then because I'm thinking more along the lines of if I'm standing on a train track and a train's coming at me and I'm Superman, it's not going to run me over. I'm going to hit that train and I'm going to all that friction and everything that I'm going to be feeling because the train's pushing against me and I'm trying to stop it versus a car in neutral, a train in neutral that you can get going. You can get it going fast, easier than you're going to get that thing to stop. And your analogy is more realistic, I guess, to the explanation. But
There is this thing called conservation of energy, right? That's what I was talking about when we were talking about. That's one of the two terms that I used. It was conservation of energy and the conservation of momentum. What you're saying is a violation of conservation of energy. If it is easier to make something go faster than it is to slow it down, then you could hook up two trains to each other where one would be constantly speeding up the other and the other would be trying to slow it down, but it couldn't. And then they could reverse. And you could get free energy out of that.
I'm explaining it so wrong because that's not what I'm saying at all.
Right? If in principle, any amount of speeding up was easier than any amount of slowing down.
Okay, so if a car, I guess it's more logical in my brain to say it this way. If a car is going 5 miles an hour and coming at me and I got to stop it, you're saying it takes the same amount of energy to get that car to stop than it would to get the car to get good. Then it would be to push the car to 5 miles an hour.
To 10 miles an hour, yeah. Yes. Barring friction and friction, barring the loss of energy to outside sources. Right. In reality, in practical conditions, it would be easier to stop it than to get it to go to 10 miles an hour. Because you would have the friction between the bearings and the friction with the air helping you to stop it. That it's always trying to stop it. That's why when you throw a thing, it eventually stops on its own. You don't need to do anything.
I guess I'm kind of throwing in a bunch of crux to it because I'm thinking. I'm not thinking the whole stop and go and I'm literally in my brain going. It'd have to be just basically the way I'm explaining things because I'm thinking of a moving car. Yet you're making you have to apply yourself your energy to it, make it stop. Whereas when I push the car, it's a neutral and it's not even moving. To me, it seems different. It seems like it give you two different effects.
No, it literally necessarily has to be the same effect, right? The difference that you're experiencing is that when you're standing still and a car crashes into you at 10 miles an hour or 30 miles an hour, it is equivalent to you running into the car at 30 miles an hour to make it move.
Yeah, but those are two different things to me, though. The act of
Actually, it's more,
you
Barney.
and then you'd be pushing it.
Based on weight, you'd have to run into the car like, I don't even know, but it would be more than 30 miles an hour because
Nope.
you only weigh 200 pounds. The car weighs 2 tons. So
It doesn't
in order
matter.
for you to
The impact is the same.
It doesn't matter. The impact is the same.
weight is is a big factor.
See, that's the problem. 'Cause
Mass.
I know what I know exactly what you're saying, but for some reason, the fucking analogy in my head is not. That's the frustrating part. I'm hearing it. I'm going, yeah, okay, it makes perfect fucking sense. Because just now when when he was asking that question, I went, yeah, the impact is the problem. It's the same thing. But the impacts for me when I'm stopping it versus I'm going are two different things. I'm thinking moving still versus a not moving impact. And I guess you can't do that if you're
Yeah.
talking about this conversation. That's why I'm confused, because I'm trying to give that analogy in a situation that analogy doesn't apply. And that's your fault, Maxwell.
So to speed up a hurricane, to make it more powerful, right? The hurricane gets its energy, the literal energy of its movement, of its winds, from heat from the ocean. It gets it across thousands of miles as it travels across the Atlantic. And as it speeds, as it reaches warmer and warmer waters, it gets more and more energy and gets sped up more and more and more, right?
But,
And the ocean gets cold.
couldn't you just
To make it much more powerful, you need to put in that much more energy into it.
I just
That
in my
energy
brain
needs to come from somewhere.
realized that you're right, because it'd be like spinning a bike tire. Well, what is it going to take to put more spin into that tire? You're going to have to go at least a little faster than it is, or put more energy in it than it's putting out. I get that part now.
Precisely.
Couldn't you just wait till the storm dies down, or to just before it gets back to a tropical storm, or before it gets to hurricane status? Does that make it a little bit more feasible in the sense of the numbers? Not in the sense of it happening or not, but that'd be when they probably do it, though.
So the whole thing that I was saying about cloud seeding being potentially a tool for diminishing hurricanes in the same way that hail defense works is it accumulates energy, it accumulates wind speed until the droplets inside it become big enough that they overcome wind speeds and the motion and actually fall down due to gravity, right?
Yes.
That takes away energy from the system. And when it finally reaches across land, then it can no longer be fed by ocean heat, and then it just dies down after its energy is spent. So what you could do...
What about a steam from a plant?
That's minuscule. That's insignificant. That's the whole point, right? If the whole hurricane in it contains as much energy as half of the amount produced on Earth in the same time, then one steam plant will not be supplying that much energy into it, right?
Okay, I get it. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry to get it. I see what you're saying now.
Okay,
fucking interactive, so I can play with it.
So how I see cloud seeding to work in preventing hurricanes is if you cloud seed off of the coast of Africa, where those winds start, you would get those clouds to accumulate faster. You would get big droplets somewhere in the middle of the Atlantic. So it would start shedding that energy through rain, through those droplets falling down, before it reaches the tropics, the Mexico Gulf, or before it reaches the eastern coast.
Yeah, I see.
So the total energy would be somewhat shed earlier, and the total energy doing landfall would be lessened by that amount. So the hurricane would be less severe. That's how I see it working.
Yeah,
Right? It is not that you are somehow modifying the mechanism by which it accumulates energy, or so that it accumulates more or less, or You're just having it shed more of it earlier.
That makes perfect logical sense. Exactly how it would think of it to work. Yeah. And it sounds a little bit more feasible too. And maybe that was it. Maybe, Mac, did you think like and I don't. Maybe I should have clarified it. I didn't even think about it, but I'm trying to see if this is what it is. When you're depicting we're talking about controlling a hurricane, in your brain, is it always Cat 5? Because there's nothing in my brain. I don't care if they even showed me the technology. I don't know what Cat 5 would do.
No, but I could see how they could create a hurricane from scratch.
No,
With HAARP.
That's impossible. That is literally impossible. We don't even understand. The part we don't understand is the system that creates that vortex. That's the issue.
Well, it's created from high pressure and low pressure areas in the atmosphere.
Yeah. Now, do you think
And
that's
the Coriolis,
just it?
and the Coriolis force.
Because there's a lot of shit that goes on in that storm, in the middle of that storm. That
Well, the
boggles
Coriolis
our
force
mind.
is it's always there. It's not just here and there and wherever. It's always there. So it's going to be a factor regardless. But the main portions is the high and low pressure areas moving around in the damn atmosphere.
Yes, but there is a reason why hurricanes form east and move west, and why and it's the same mechanism that creates trade winds, right? And where trade winds intersect with the relatively still equatorial belt, you will get vorticity. That vorticity, when it crosses over the warm waters of the Atlantic, especially when it reaches the Gulf Stream and the Mexican Gulf itself, will then be sped up by the heat rising from the sea. Those are the mechanisms that we know of for hurricanes. Those are
Right.
those
So
broad,
using HAARP is all they'd have to do is find the prime
Stop saying HAARP.
the prime area. Okay,
HAARP
well,
is
that's what it is. HAARP.
technology, and
It is
it has
technology.
nothing to do with hurricanes.
It's just not feasible. There's not.
But
What I'm
HAARP
saying is,
doesn't have
it's
anything to do
feasible
with
to
hurricanes.
use HAARP, or it's possible. Would you just listen for a second? It's possible for them to create a hurricane with HAARP. Okay, it's just
How?
not feasible because of the amount of energy that's required to heat the upper atmosphere
Oh, yeah,
to
fair
create a
enough.
high pressure area big enough to. Okay,
So
but the product, the ingredients would have to be perfect for them to do that. The water would have to be the right temperature and the right area around a low pressure system that they could create a high pressure system in. It's just not feasible enough because
So,
the amount of
the
energy
question-
required
No one
to do
thought
something
about
like
this.
even there, the question is whether even if you had like unlimited energy to put into HAARP, like eventually, yes, you would destroy the planet by the radiation emitted. But so there is an upper limit at which it becomes ridiculous. But HAARP in its operation affects the ionosphere. It affects the ultra rare upper reaches of the atmosphere. Those are not included in the mechanism of
weather systems.
hurricane formation. Yeah, of the trade winds, of the winds that we are talking about, which are all in the main sequence atmosphere,
Troposphere.
in the lower in the
Yeah, 'cause
troposphere.
The main reason they were doing this work in the ionosphere is because they wouldn't have to worry about weather, because everything below the ionosphere is where things are created, whether it be lightning, the high and low pressure systems that form. I mean, everything. It's not all the whole atmosphere that controls that part of it. See, and there's no way in hell they can create. I mean, like the amount of whatever they would need, that I believe is impossible. Impossible. I don't think they'll ever make a hurricane. I just don't see it.
So, no, there could be feasible if you had unlimited energy, if you had unlimited resources. There could be a point where you could trigger a hurricane. Well, if you had truly unlimited energy, you could create a hurricane literally particle by particle.
Yeah, that's what I meant to say is not create a hurricane, but you could
Trigger it.
create the perfect environment for Earth. You could create enough of stuff needed actually for it to naturally take effect.
Yeah, to take advantage of the existing conditions of the Gulf Stream and the heat of the Atlantic and the trade winds that are already there to trigger an event. Yeah, fair enough. But again, that then falls into that category of we do not even have a theoretical model of how to do that, because meteorology is really, really fucking hard. Like really, really fucking hard. We know more about quantum physics than we do about meteorology.
I think it's kind of fucking ridiculous. We know
That's
so much
sad.
about
That's pretty
space, but
sad.
we don't know about the oceans. That's crazy.
Space, like rocketry and most of the astronomy is really, really child's play compared to meteorology.
Because it's literally just the observation. All you can do is observe.
You observe things which themselves are in pretty much ideal circumstances. The like interplanetary medium is so rare that you can, with high accuracy, consider it to be absolute vacuum. You don't need to take account of the couple of atoms of a hydrogen or a couple of billion of atoms of hydrogen that the Earth collides with every day as it moves around the sun, because their total mass is like less than a gram compared to the total mass of the Earth. So it won't affect anything. Go ahead.
So this hurricane now is now being recorded as the second strongest Atlantic hurricane on record. The one that's on
Really?
right now. Yep,
Wow.
that's what
That
they're reporting
Climate
right
change
now.
is real, folks.
Yeah, you think?
Well, how do you believe anything that the Weather Channel or anybody puts out when you watch one of their weather reports in the hurricane and the guy's leaning into the wind like he's about to be blown away, but two people in the background walk by like it's a freaking sunny day at the park? Has anybody else seen that video?
Yeah.
American news television is so amusing.
But yeah, they're just gonna keep getting worse and worse.
Yep. If the atmosphere overall is
But back to
heating
your point about like space.
Go ahead.
Yeah, back to the point about how we know more about space than we know about Earth. It's because space is more observable. It doesn't change like drastically every couple of years. You can observe things from billions of years ago. You can't really.
That's,
I mean, you can. It's a lot harder to do that in the oceans because it's just changing so rapidly.
that's a misleading statement, right? When you're talking about space, you're talking about a myriad of things that we generally know something about. And we know more about them than we do know about the Earth. But we know Earth much better than we know space in detail, right? We don't know nearly enough, like Venus is in space. Venus is another planet. We don't know nearly as much about Venus's weather or the sun's weather or the weather on exoplanets than we do about the weather on Earth. We definitely know more about the weather on Earth.
Yeah, I guess that's a good point. You have to, you can't really compare them, I guess.
Apples and
scale-wise,
oranges.
because
Yeah. So we know about
Yeah.
general large scale things which are well behaved, such as orbits, such as like gravitational influences, magnetic fields, stuff which are general and broad. Basically, those things which are well behaved. The thing that we don't know about the weather is because it is governed by chaos theory of mathematics. It is not well behaved. Turbulence in general, turbulence in fluids is not well behaved sometimes. And we don't know enough about not well behaved systems. Our maths, our physics, our whole epistemological framework is not set up to work with non well behaved systems, unpredictable systems. That's why we call them unpredictable, where a small change can have a large outcome. And that's kind of my contention with Sean when he says, well, we've put this much research into going to the moon, and we've put this much research into the weather, therefore somebody somewhere might know enough about the weather. No, because the triggers for it are so unpredictable that we do not even have the theories of how it might work, let alone the technology of how it does work, let alone practical uses of it. And brute forcing it would be way too obvious.
Everyone in chat, just give me 2.5 seconds. I got to talk to these guys real quick. sorry about that, guys. Wanted to make sure Maxwell was eating his taking his vitamins, and was ready went to the bathroom before bedtime. He agreed, so we're good now. I'm gonna go ahead and end it. Well, regardless, I'm gonna end it because damn, I've been streaming for over 3 hours, and I don't like doing that very often unless I'm gonna do it for 8 hours. But Barney, I would like you to take me up on that for tomorrow, and so that way I can at least get my argument presented rather than a patent.
Yeah, sure.
And it again, regardless of whether I'm right or wrong, having that conversation with you, I'm gonna figure it out. I'm gonna figure out where I need to dot my I's and all that good stuff. Because I don't mind being wrong about it at all. Maxwell, I don't mind being wrong at all. It's how you come at me, man.
I'm never
He
wrong.
just minds.
You're
He just minds it when you tell him that.
Yes, very much. Like, yeah, pretty much the big issue. All right.
Or when the Rumpus tells him that.
Yeah. Okay, tomorrow. We're going to do this tomorrow. Everyone in the chat that was talking shit the whole stream. Tomorrow. Damn it. Yep, I don't even really got any planned for tomorrow, except for that now. And when I get off the stream, that's when I'm going to start looking.
Okay.
So what are you gonna study? Because I'm gonna study up so I can debunk you.
Oh, how about that? Ooh, idea. Ding. Let's debate it. You're the moderator, Barney, because you're the only one with a sensible
What
mind.
are we
anyway.
debating?
Whether it's hurricane
Okay.
controllers,
If I am the moderator, I have. If I'm the
But I
moderator, I
can't-
have no horse in this race. All I care about is that the conversation is civil, and that there is no like.
you can come
open
to a
dishonesty.
conclusion, though.
I can't present anything though. I
Do
can't
you-
present anything though, so I'm at a loss already.
Would you know where you would present from if you had a way? So, like, if you gathered those links and you can get them to me, would that work?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
'cause then I'll put them. Then I'll just share when you need them shared.
Well, wait a minute. We gotta. What are we gonna debate about first?
Hurricane control, feasible or not? Not if it's being done, if it's possible.
Well,
Regardless of-
we can
regardless
end
of
that
the
right now
conversation we
because
I feel like
it is possible. It's just not feasible.
You were saying it's not possible. Matter of fact, you were saying it's impossible
No,
because of the.
no.
the
I said
amount of
it's
energy it contains.
infeasible. It's impossibly infeasible.
We will start tomorrow's show with every claim Max said and every claim I said about this topic. Trust me, there's no doubt in my mind. At some point, I said something wrong, no doubt. But you did too.
I'm not saying it's not possible. I just said it's not feasible.
No, you were saying it's not possible. Because it
isn't possible.
remember,
It
it's
isn't
more
possible at the
feasible.
moment.
Anything can be feasible can be. Yeah, we'll wait till tomorrow. I'm
Tomorrow.
I'm frustrated and I don't. You guys know, but anybody gonna be on a live stream, promote something, uploading something? Anybody?
Oh, I was before this. I was on a channel called Amateur Conversationalist or something like that. Let me look it up. So I run a Kyudo club in Zagreb. Kyudo is the Japanese martial art of archery, and one of the guys from Nokasuchi's called me to kind of talk about that. So if you're interested in what Kyudo is and what it does and what it's about, look up Baritone Bullseye is the name of that.
Bullseyes?
Yeah, that's what he decided to call me. But let me just check out what the channel is. Oh, it's in my history. That's where I'll find it. The Amateur Conversationalist, episode 4, Barney Tearspell, the Baritone Bullseye. Here's the link. And
Yeah, I'm
here's
definitely
the
gonna check
link.
that out, 'cause
There.
I got
Oops.
this. I got
No,
this really
that's not
bad.
the link. That's the name.
I got this really bad issue with wanting to know about every martial art there is, whether it be how they used it back in the day or just the hobbyists of now. I like knowing how they did it. I like knowing what it took. Better yet, like the idea of how the Indians were able to shoot the bow and arrow so damn accurately on horses is insane to me. All right, this over here. Okay. Anybody else? Anyone want to share anything? Hi, my name is. I have a third leg. Anything? Nobody? Okay. All right, guys, I'm gonna get the hell out of here. I'm gonna go ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm.
Yep.
I'm.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm talking to Gem Panda to try and actually find some real flat earthers for my
Yeah.
debate thing. So
I'll-
hopefully I'll get that up and running
We'll
before
talk.
the end of the month.
We'll talk after this.
And I'm going to LIGO soon. Hopefully this month.
Which one? Which one are you going to? Are you going to both of them, Sasha?
One in Washington. Yeah.
Washington.
One.
Because Texas is better.
Texas is better. Texas is far away.
All right, take it easy, everybody.
Okay.
Yeah. Took a little break.
Run away!
All right, people. I know I was pretty much silent, but I didn't really say much of anything. They were pretty much saying it all. I got to take off. I got some stuff I got to take care of. And then also at the same time, get ready for tomorrow. We'll clarify it tomorrow. But again, I'm gonna make this as clear as I can. They do not turn a switch. They don't have a video game controller, and they're controlling shit. But I promise you, I'm gonna bring more than sufficient evidence to show where I'm coming from. Damn, turn my phone off. But other than that, guys, I'm gonna get out of here. Damn, phone will stop ringing. Appreciate you guys being here. I'm sorry I didn't get in the chat too often this time, but it will change. Tomorrow I'll be here in the chat a little bit more, and we'll get into things. Like I said, I gotta take care of some stuff, but I'll see you guys around. Peace.